Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья! Сегодня в прямом эфире на АЛЛАТРА ТВ
Greetings, dear
стартует
friends.
новый,
Today,
можно
at the
сказать,
live
уникальный
broadcast
и
at ALLATRA
грандиозный
TV,
проект
we
под
are
названием
starting a
«Калейдоскоп фактов».
unique and
Первое,
grandiose
да, вот сразу
project
запретясь
named
его внимание
Kaleidoscope of
стоит уделять.
Facts.
Ну,
The first,
начну с того, что
what is
сегодня
the
мы выходим
uniqueness
из
of that
таким
and the
форматом,
grand
что у меня
scope of that?
есть
I like to
у
start
нас
from the fact that we
трансляция,
are
переводы на
bringing
10
this
языков,
format
от
into live
9
action. We will
в
have
разных
translation into
соцсетях,
10
в разных
languages.
площадках.
You
Что
can see
еще
our
более важно,
broadcasters in the
проект
different social media and
имеет в своей
platforms. But what
основной
is
сути,
also important,
скажем
this
так,
project itself has at the
определенную задачу,
background and the
которая
backbone
направлена
of
на
it
раскрытие, да, и
a
более
specific
детальный
task that is
доступ
dedicated
к
to the
информации, к той
opening and
информации,
more in detail or
той информации,
profound work
которую мы
on
все с вами
the
уже
data that we
не раз
have, the
на
data that was
деле, может
presented
быть,
to us, to all
сегодня
of us,
наблюдать,
for
ощущать
many,
своими
many times, and we were
ладонями.
able to
Те,
get in
кто
touch with it in the
смотрел
programs with
буквально
participation of Vigor
недавно
Mikhailovich Danilov, because once who
передачу
are
«Конверсация»,
for a long time or
знаете,
recently
кто
started to
это
watch those
транслирует, да,
programs and
международные
to
сети
get in touch with
телевидения
the
«АЛЛАТРА»,
knowledge that are
понимаете,
being
что
broadcasted by
хочется
international
рассыпаться
public
в
movement
теплые
Allatra, you do
объятия, да, вот
understand
Виталий. И как
that
раз, да,
you are
именно
trying
сегодня
to
13
get into
августа
depths of the things, the
2020 года
details and
стартует
everything. And
такой
today, on the
международный
13th of
проект
August of
«Калейдоскоп
2020,
фактов».
we are
В нашей
starting
сегодня первой
this international
передаче,
project, this
скажем
Kaleidoscope
так,
of
для
Facts. In
телезрителей,
our
для
first
участников, ну,
broadcast,
наверное,
without
более
further ado, we have
3
probably
континентов,
participants
поэтому
from 2 or probably 3 continents, really,
говорит о
that
той
are participating still. And this
атмосфере,
is
да, о том
actually telling us about
впечатлении,
how interesting it actually
что
is. The second thing
можно
is
перенять
what is the core of this project? What is the backbone of it? What can we bring through this process? And to the next month also, on the 13th of September, to make another broadcast live, but possibly in different country, possibly with different participants, and picking as a background the program that actually you like, and open up the information or get in depth with what you like to hear. So today we will get in depth and profoundly get to know to the data and facts that were presented in the program Angels Don't Fall. More in details, what we will touch base upon, more on mediators, on how did the consumer society actually arose and the history of that and the development of it, on the underground cities and on this as fact as it was recently gotten to know on the technology of all seeing eye of God. Many of you actually know that why specifically this piece of data or what made you like to start from those topics. I can answer you simply because it's interesting. So the ones who watch this presentation has actually and program, it's really nice to get to know those and to answer yourself why during a few thousand years it was hidden from us any piece of this data. Who does benefit from the fact that in our society we'll have this actual made up consumers and that we have mediators, and for somebody to hid something from us, for somebody or something to hide some prominent facts or axioms to be hidden from actual population, and so that you have your point of view, and for everybody who participates in this program who does the launch of Kaleidoscope of Facts, this information is important for us to stop an illusion of disillusionment and to openly ask a question to everybody who in this long period of time was hiding all of that from us. So we shall start.
Greetings, dear friends. It's not a secret that we live in the consumer society. Consumer society is diminished the life of a person, devalued the meaning of life, and it's lower than the coin. And it substituted the meaning of life of a person. These painful symptoms can be seen in all spheres of life, starting from family and finishing with governmental structure. Today, we are going to discuss uncomfortable but very bright factors which prove the beginning of this consumer society. And we'll discuss the phenomenon of mediation, which dominates in our society. You will ask, why is it important? Because mediators between a human and God is like a mountain which a person cannot go around, or either like a hole which a person cannot leap over. These mediators deceive people. They are magicians, sorcerers, oracles, priests, who play on the foolishness of humans, fears, laziness, material wishes, and strives to know the future and influence on it, with their help, of course. But they do not open up the price that they will pay for this. They hide this. They make a person pray for the dead. Invest the attention in mortal things, in the illusion of awakening, dreams, and cares about material things. But prophets who brought true knowledge to this earth, they always informed people about it. But unfortunately, based on this knowledge, people themselves built institutions of religions, institutions of government, of mass of people. But now we see this tendency that all over the globe, in all religions, we see that people leave the religious institutions, churches, mosques, from different religious groups. And I would like to suppose that it is connected, that people become cleverer. They start seeing these lies and stop believing their fairy tales, because when they follow the one, they cannot find what they were looking for. But in each religion, there is this group of priests who would like to fortune tell their fate. But each person has the only fate. This is a spiritual fate. Each person can and must become an angel and become the part of spiritual world. But for some reason, these priests hide this information and redirect their direction to material things. And it was for centuries. Our grandparents lived like this and many generations before them. But maybe it is time to stop this deceit and to create such conditions that this lie will stop, prevent people, our children and future generations, that everybody could live freely and happily and will be able to make their choice. That is why we decided to talk about these topics, to make a dot and stop this lie.
Yes, thank you very much, Marina. And I would like to begin with Christianity. When I was reading the Gospel, I came out on this quote: "Do not call anyone on earth your father. No one is your father. Only he who is in heaven." But we see holy fathers in church. And I started searching and trying to understand where priests and holy fathers actually emerged from. It's interesting that when you come to the church, you have to kiss the cross and somebody's hand. I agree with the cross, but what about the hand? So I decided to dig information, and I would like to read out a very interesting such a quote: "A special value for the apocalyptic heritage for early Christians were legends related to the divine mediators, heavenly and earthly figures, who were attributed and tended to maintain connection between God and people. The Jewish apocalyptic literature was very important field where various biblical traditions of divine mediators, like angelic mediators, for example, Archangel Michael, or the angel of the name of God, or such as Melchizedek, mediators, this concept was developing, and I was interested. Who is Melchizedek, for example? I found a very interesting piece of information that in the Bible, as a high priest, there is Salim Akin Melchizedek. And from this point, I thought that what is the high priest? I'd like to know the meaning of this word. And I found this high priest literally is the great priest, you know, sometimes just priest. And this position, of course, I was very interested how this high priest, what kind of qualities should person have in order to become high priest. Unfortunately, I couldn't find such information, but I found the information that this position, this title was given for the lifetime, and it was inherited by and from this person. For example, regardless of what kind of qualities a person has, but if you born in the high priest family, you become high priest yourself. And I also was shocked what kind of clothes they had, what kind of garments. I will read out a little piece. The tassels on priestly garments should remind high priests of the commandments, and he should have comply with these commandments, while the bells on his clothes meant that the high priest should maybe safely approach the Lord. So, guys, actually, we don't have any bells right now in our garments, and it's very important, dangerous for us to approach God because we don't have such clothes. I totally shocked with that because, for example, if we add some bells on our clothes, we will cope with our problems. Also, the chasuble is a part of priestly clothes. It was the intention of this piece of clothes was to present the glory and the sanctity of the high priest. And you see how they exalted themselves actually. But the most interesting point, you know, isn't it strange that even right now, nowadays, in our time, there are many religious trends. Higher a person is in hierarchy in some priestly structure, the richer is his garments, his clothes, and the bigger cross he have, the more precious stones is on this person. And it seems to be very strange because we know that real monks, real saints, according to the life descriptions of these saints, they actually were very modest people. They didn't have these, you know, rich attributes which showed that they are so kind of special and have some special status in the hierarchy. Also, what I was interested in is there is a very interesting fact which I should mention. Of course, there are many duties for the high priest, and one of them is very, important. He had to ask the will of God through Romans and through special tablets. He had a tablet, a brass tablet, and he had to ask this tablet whether a person is guilty or not. And actually, people undertook the responsibility for making such decision. And it's like, for example, I will write two pieces of paper, and I'll select one of them and tell you that you should behave like this or not like that. Also, another interesting point that there was a Babylonian idol wheel who was carrying tablets of fate on his chest. So Babylonians believed that priests can get into certain relations with the deity, and in order to get revelations from the deity, according to the astrologists of the 19th century, it was very quite possible that there were, such an analogy between tablets of fate and also the who got to heaven together with the Lord. So it turns out that the thief got into the heaven as the first person because the Christ kind of paid for this original sin. we see the situation that there was Adam and Eve, and after them, no one was in heaven. Then Jesus came, paid for the original sin with his life, and then everyone is invited to heaven. So the high priest was actually waiting for someone to be the first to enter heaven. But we know such biblical characters as Solomon, Saul, and others. But how is it that when we buy some, for example, new apartment or house, we send the cat there and wait?
Ну, вот примерно как-то так и получается. Поэтому это, конечно, очень важно не просто читать свои священные писания для галочки, да, что, мол, прочитал и забыл, но на самом деле очень-очень важно разбираться.
It's important not just to read the gospel or other sacred texts, but it's very important to understand their meaning. I also found a very interesting quote from the Orthodox literature. A mediator is a person without whom it's impossible to communicate, but every person has full opportunity to communicate with God personally, and in Orthodoxy, it is said that God cannot save a person without the will of the person himself. And of course, no mediators needed. Surely we don't need any mediators. We have a direct path to God through our internal world, and it is so wonderful. And we kind of get rid of this burden from this necessity to use these rituals and magic, etc. And I also wanted to refer to the traditions which Marina has mentioned. For example, you approach your grandma and say, I want to talk about the internal, about the soul, but not about the feet, the aching body, but they are telling us, the grandma is telling, but these are traditions, this is how our ancestors lived. So there is such a delusion among people that it's wrong to have traditions. Everyone needs to actually learn on his own. I also would like to mention such a point as philosophers from antiquity, and they also contributed to development of Christianity, so to say. For example, Plato, he introduced the concept of goodness or welfare as a symbiosis of benefit and goodness. And despite the fact that this goodness, as he said, is useless because the fathers of church, they used this concept of Plato about the welfare, and they actually corrected the Old Testament and the Christian teaching of Jesus. God's grace, unlike the kindness of God, actually provoked this, faith in God's help, in getting some benefit from Him. And faith became, and prayer became a way and tool to gain something from God. We discussed this with Natalia, and actually I never thought about, the goodness is here is like a quality of a person, but it's like welfare, it's property. Yes, just like Ola is saying. Hello, dear friends. Basically, we had a call with Olga, and we were amazed how the fathers of church took Plato's interpretation and used it for many, many centuries, our time. The Plato was who spoke about this in the 5th century, that you have to be welfare, you have to ensure goodness in your behavior, and if you bring some goodness or welfare into the world, this is the goodness. For example, in Russian, it is actually the same word which denotes both property and the goodness, the internal goodness. And this way, they actually eliminated the concept of God as love. But let's think, guys, God is love. What kind of property or other welfare stuff we can speak about? So I agree with Olga. Since I'm a representative of historical science, I was just amazed how in scientific works they actually base on the Plato's teaching, but at the same time, they admit that the Plato's works are translated in their own way. So we have an opportunity to take the ancient Greek texts, translate ourselves, and we will see what kind of substitutions are there, because the angelology concept is also in the historical science if we look at the relevant works. And philosophers of the 20th century actually considered this topic numerous times. So thank you, Olga, for speaking about that. Yes. As for this welfare or goodness, when I was reading this quote in Russian, it wasn't right away clear for me what kind of goodness he has. But now I would like to finish my speech with the following quote. How mistaken are those people who seek happiness outside of themselves, in foreign lands and journeys, in niches and glories, in riches and glories, in great possessions and pleasures, in diversions and vain things, which have a bitter end, in the same things to construct the tower of happiness outside ourselves, as it is to build a house in a place that is consistently shaken by earthquakes. Happiness is found within ourselves, and blessed is the man who has understood this. Happiness is a pure heart. Such a heart becomes a throne for God. Thus says Christ of those who have pure hearts. I will visit him and will walk in them, and I will be a God in them. And they will be people. What can be lacking to them? Nothing, nothing at all, for they have the greatest good in their hearts, God himself. It was the words, a quote by Nectarius of Aegina from the book The Path of Happiness. And really, as it is said here, everything, the richest, the greatest wealth is within people's hearts. If people ask for material welfare, they will become dust. But if a person really follows this path, a person really studies his scriptures and sees in the scriptures that God is love, and if a person grows this love inside of him, how can this person ask anything from God? Because he can be only grateful to God, and he will only send gratitude and love for God. That's it. Thank you.
Can I also add something? When you were quoting, and that we heard before, the quotation, who who called the person to material things, and now when you cited real quotations, I think that all participations of this conference understood this difference between a lie and the truth. And this proves that when we really start to study, to understand, then we discover the truth as it is. It's a very simple truth. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And you start to understand how important it is to study sacred texts, because each of them has this grain that can bring a person to this inner aim, inner change, inner transformation. And now we have a lot of things which lead us away from this truth, and now we have seen it. But studying this, asking the right questions, a person can understand. And I offer you to listen to an interview with Dr. Cohen. He's a professor of religions from the United States, who is talking about angelology.
The angel is seen very much as the divine itself. A lot of people have misconceptions about angels because much of angelology developed well after the Bible and Quran. People gave tasks to them that they really didn't have very much. We have writers like later on in the church that start talking about the angels. And over time, we see angels having separate tasks that they perform for God. But basically, they're representatives directly from God, because God can't be approached directly. He is so different, so separate, so other, that there needs to be, in this case, some kind of intermediary between God. But on the other hand, we see, for instance, in Judaism and in Islam, the rabbi and imam is not an intermediary. They are people who are trained in the actual rites and practices of the group, but one does not have to go through them to go to God. This is a misconception. Whereas in Catholicism, you have priests, you have other ministers and things of that sort. Jews and Muslims have direct relationships with God and don't need intermediaries per se.
I think what interested me also, the suffix ology is commonly used in the English language to denote a field of study. So how can one study angels?
Good question. There are hundreds of books that people have written about angels. When people get further away from God and feel further away, they attempt to have bridges, like prophets and things of this sort, that act as a connection that they didn't have with God per se. And we see this happening in a lot of cultures, this idea of trying to have elements that bring us closer to the divine.
Здравствуйте. Хотелось бы тоже продолжить тему
Greetings.
ангелологии.
I would like to continue about angelology. In the program, in the video with participation of Igor Mikhailovich, Angels Do Not Fall, this topic is touched upon, and this question was new for me, so I wondered what angelology is. And I would like to share the information that I have found. Angelology, in general, is a science of angels. It studies what connection angels have to humanity and how they serve God's purposes. But today, there are many views on this subject, and there are many disputes about angels. For example, in the book of Daniel, angels were given names and titles. It was believed that angels were mediators between God and humans, proclaiming the will of God. The idea of a hierarchy among angels, which began in the book of Daniel, went through all apocalyptic literature and eventually led to the creation of a complex heavenly hierarchy of a huge scale. For example, there is an interesting information. For example, the descendants of the ancient Hebrew religious and philosophical school, the Essence, believed that it was possible to follow the spiritual forces when using specific names of angels. They considered that their names have magic power, and they used them for spells and witchcrafts. In the Talmud, angels were the tools of God, and in the Middle Ages, they became tools of humans who, by calling them by names or by other means, could make them visible. How, in general, how did it happen that angels were endowed with ranks? It turns out that this is the work of humans. In the work about the heavenly hierarchy adopted by the Church in the 6th century in Byzantine, written by the disciple of Apostle Paul, Dionysius, angels were divided into phases, ranks, and degrees. So it was just written in books. Jesus didn't tell about it. Interestingly, that in the court of the Byzantine emperors, there was a hierarchy of nobility, and later this heavenly hierarchy became the reflection the copy of this hierarchy, and they claimed that both powers are established by God, but eventually this earthly hierarchy was copied like in a God hierarchy, and here we see the answer why it was done so, why the angels were described this way, which is really very far from the real understanding of the spiritual world. Moreover, it's a study about countless angels which follow each step of a person. A very interesting and good way to intimidate believers. Why have people invented such a complex hierarchy? Maybe really just to justify the hierarchy in religions and as well as in social order, to justify the mediation between God and human in pursuit of selfish goals such as power, worship, submission, material enrichment. Isn't that the same what is happening now in religions and in different sects? Even within the same religion, there are controversies. Some people say that a human is higher than an angel, others vice versa. The third say that a human can become an angel. There is no unity, and everything is to make it simpler to control and frighten people. Maybe it's time to understand that there are no mediators between God and human. God is love, and you can come to God only through love and our sincere feelings to God, but not through mediators and invented rituals, just some subscriptions from the mind. And each person can come to God.
I also wanted to add, when you were saying that angels serve a human, no, really, actually, a human has a way, an opportunity to become an angel. But for example, if we read some information from artifacts, if we reach such text where it is said that angels serve people, basically, how would you want to become an angel to serve someone? So this way, actually, our aspiration for the divine is being killed in us, because they describe the angel life as something bad, and a person thinks, oh, no, I'll better live as a human and let angels serve me. So basically, everything is aimed at enslaving a person and not giving an opportunity to develop.
Yes, really, these different rituals which somebody invented, and we live according to them. But to come to God, it is possible for each person. And I would like also to add to watch a fragment from the video with participation of Igor Mikhailovich Danilov, Angels Do Not Fall.
Hierarchy exists here, while this is called reverse fractals. So that's like the devil copies something and always remakes it in its own benefit. Thus people turn out to be, let's say, fallen, not angels, stressing on that, but fallen people who bow before the devil, before his material temptations. It's they who actually start all of that, while the consciousness tormented, right? They start to remake everything in their own benefit. Why so? Because if they put themselves mediators between God and a human being and say that they are closer to God, otherwise how will they help other people? In no way. They are supposed to be closer than the person who came to them for their help, for him to pay for their help, right? So this is the sort of mediation. And they have hierarchy, and how can it be otherwise? It's an organization, it's a well-established business, fine-tuned over the centuries. How can you justify something like that? Well, there's only one thing left. So you can just explain that the spiritual world has it the same way. So there's one angels, there's two superior and inferior ones, and so on. And this like all that like them. So everything is sort of honest. The only thing is that the angels don't have ranks. So there is responsibility, but there is no ranks. While the attributes, like they're putting on the shoulder straps, so like 2 wings, 3 wings.
By the way, they also say,
at least there's not 3 feathers, but just 3, at least 3 wings. So it was such a wonderful sneak peek from the program when our participants are telling about such a unique science as angelology. So the first thing that we, and I'm personally pointing my attention to, is that misunderstanding of the people who made this science up on how in real life the spirit world actually made up. And thank you so much, Ihor Mikhailovich, for all of his work, to everybody who actually releases those programs. Then we get to know how it really is and what is the core of that and what kind of mediators they are mentioning, because really the ones who know that the God is the ones in the many, in the unity, and that each and every angel is just God. It's its particle. Then in that kind of sense, you get to understand what kind of mediators we are speaking of and what kind of functions that the angel have. But when people don't understand a thing about that, then it was, as it was mentioned in the fragment of the presentation, they're trying from their earthly bounded mind, trying to elaborate on something, just to make something up, just to bail, to sort of place something as an explanation for their crimes and for their unknowingness of the things. Because we've started from the fact that religion and the Christianity specifically, we would like just to know how it's done in other religions, so that Karkin, please, the floor goes to you. Greetings. Thank you for giving me a word. As many respected speakers mentioned before me, that you need to study your holy papers and and touching based on Islam, it doesn't respect any kind of mediatory. If we would read out the quote from Quran, then it says that people of the world, let's get to the common word for everyone, for us, for you, so that we will not gonna bow to anybody else except Allah, and we're not gonna make anybody else, and we're not gonna respect each other as Allah. So that if something's done that, just be a witness of that, and we are Muslims. And so here directly it's mentioned that you don't have to bow to a friend or somebody who is in the middle of the God in person. So there's nothing actually higher than the Allah, the God himself. And so with that understanding in mind, the understanding that are placed in Islam, they're actually helping you to more deeply understand the purpose of our existence, to open up your soul, as Olha mentioned in her presentation, to open up herself to the higher and to the God. But touching the topic of the mediators, I'd just like to mention the fact that unfortunately in the modern world there are such a things and witnesses of that the teachers that are calling themselves a teacher, they are just leading people not in the straight road, but actually in the search of magic or just extraordinary events or power. I'd just like to touch a small topic of Sufism. If you would to take the real Sufism, or the origin of this name of Sufism, it comes from Safa, purity, in the Arabic language, which is actually your soul pureness. So the pureness of your soul. And I'd just like to make a small quote from the book, the revealing what's hidden behind the veil, the oldest Persian part of Sufism, so that if you're this actually phenomena of pureness, it's the core of the heart of Sufi. And if it's a tree, then it's supposed to have everything else that represents of the person that's actually pure. With that understanding, we have in the modern world such delusions that caricats that teachers that are actually making people and calling people out to make them higher than the others. They make themselves as if they're saint, and they violate the knowledge and the the knowledge of the Islam as its primordial value and primordial source, which is also not supposed to happen. And you're not supposed to betray like that, or to portray somebody as Allah. And those teachers, they make themselves as high as that, saying that their words are not to be questioned. They're just saying that what they say is the ultimate truth. And those things, that's what happens is that they just follow them. And just entering this kind of circles, they just don't even have a chance to question them. They don't have an ability to doubt the actions of their teacher. This is the complete thing that actually violates the aim of your personal development to achieve the connection with the God. And if you would touch a base to the saying of Ibn Taymiyyah that the true Sufism has the right to exist, but only if you consider it as a purification of your soul, as a practice of cleansing your soul from the worldly aspiration and filth of passion. And touching based upon the miracles that people are trying to achieve in their lifetime, and just hoping and dreaming to understand, to hoping to have like some proof or like supernatural events from the spirit world. I just like to read out, or just to remember the Prophet Muhammad, the story of his life when others are asked him, or pagans asked him to miracles or extraordinary, that was something that violated the nature of law. What Muhammad mentioned, say, exalted in my Lord, was I ever but a human messenger? So he directly mentioned that it's not right to ask the God for something supernatural, because all of the miracles from Allah, they will be perceived in the as a regular thing. So if a person gets to think on the structure of the universe and how we are made up, how does this world is, how it's made and how it's structured, and to see its beauty, he will understand that that is a miracle and that is a proof that the God exists. I would also like to make a quote from Quran that says, "Indeed, the creation of heaven and earth, the alternation of night and day, and the great ships which sailed through the sea, in which the benefits of people, and what Allah has sent down from the heaven of rain, given the life thereby to the earth after its lifelessness, and the sparing there every kind of moving creature, and His directing of the wind and closing controls between the heaven and earth are signs of people who use reason." And the true mediators, the real mediators of the knowledge, is the spirit world, and the actually prophets and everybody else who they send. And in support of that, I'd just like to read out the quote from Quran. And indeed, the Quran is the revelation from the Lord to the world. The trustworthy spirit has brought it down upon your heart, that you may be of the warner. So here is directly saying that the knowledge, the primordial knowledge, are given directly from Allah, using the Holy Spirit or Archangel Gabriel that came to Muhammad. Kirkin, thank you so much, especially for the examples that you've put, because how representative they are, it's really fascinating. And just to simply think of that, just it's covering up, it's revealing the cover-ups that were present in the theories that are being brought up to the society and the media and religions, and like the subdivisions of religions. And the fact that what you've mentioned right now is actually, it's not just the simple uniqueness of that, but it's the core of the truth and how the things are actually made up right now. Because if a prophet were asked, like his fellows and neighbors, and ask him for miracles, what kind of answer did he receive? Isn't it a miracle already that the Allah sent you Quran, that Allah sent you the truth and the pureness? And how displaced and delusioned people are in the core understanding what is a miracle. And the example of that Allah himself has sent the prophet, the angel, for him to teach the prophet, for him to place them on the road and the truth and everything, and not any other like human being to teach them. As like right now, a few moments ago were mentioned by other presenters, that there's somebody else who you can approach, ask something for, and so on and so forth. But it's just simply, you just need to study. So like, you just need to go to the origin of the story, the uniqueness and the beauty from my point of view, as a simple viewer and as a participant of our conference. The beauty of Islam is that it's a young religion, and they don't have that much violation or changes. So thank you so much once again for the information that you've presented and shared with us, and for us and for our dear viewers. Thank you so much as well, dear studio.
Можно я еще чуточку добавлю вот по поводу ислама, молодая религия? Ведь мы знаем, что Святое Писание, например, Библия, она же не была написана на русском языке, да, а были переводы. И
May I also add a little bit?
Когда я искала цитаты из Библии, то есть получается там вот такой список.
When I was looking for quotations from the Bible, there is a huge list of translations, and each has its own understanding. And when you study, you have to prove to be sure that it's correct, because even a little substitution can change the meaning of a sentence or the whole paragraph. And I also agree with you, Oля, how important it is to study the original sources from in the original language. As for Quran, the Prophet has never thought that it would be translated, and it was written in one language, in the original, and other translations are considered interpretations. And if we look back to the history, what the system of mediators was parasitizing, that the source was written on the language which is not accessible, and or the language which was not spoken about or did not spoken yet, it couldn't be understood. Then much attention was paid to the priest who can interpret the meaning of what was written, and it underlines once again the interest of the priests, that people must be ignorant. That is why we understand how important education is, how important for each person to develop intellectually, to see consciously the truth.
Thank you so much for the comment that you've made. Also, what's actually interesting to get to know how the things are here in the Buddhism and shamanism item. We know that you are living in the society and the place where the Buddhism is practiced, and could you also share with us how are things going and where you're from?
Hello, dear friends. Yes, and to continue, I would like to say that it is very important to understand and study the sources. In Tuva, region of Russia, people, they believe in Buddhism and shamanism, and they are closely intertwined between each other. Sometimes a person goes to visit a shaman for some question, and then he goes to visit a lama. And Buddhism and shamanism have the concept of angels. And you can also say that there are just intermediaries there. So Buddhism has no concept of God the Creator. Let's speak about shamanism a little bit. Shaman talks to spirits. Can we have a look at the picture, please? Okay. Yes. Yes, so there is the picture there, Aydin. Yes, thank you. So they go into the trance state and they talk to spirit. And the main functions of shamans, they cure people, they remove the bad energy of the people maybe sent They attract health, luck, they make talismans, they see people off to the other world after the death. So there are several special days and so on. And they also bless the house or the car. In other words, they solve all the material issues that people come to them with. Shamans have their own hierarchy. There is the spiritual shaman, and there is the shaman that is lower in hierarchy. Let's have a look at the next slide. The next slide, please. Well, it is considered that the stronger the spirit is with which the shaman talks, then the stronger the shaman is. And we have the supreme shaman, and we also have shamans that are lower in rank. Let's have a look at the next picture, please. Picture number 5. Okay, so let's continue. Previously, shamans were working alone, but now they work together. They join some sort of community, and we have 3 communities in the Republic, 3 shaman communities. And actually, what can you ask from spirits? People can just ask material things from spirits and not spiritual things. As far as Buddhism goes, there are a lot of schools and directions, and the people of Tuva, they are followers of the Tibetan tradition, and Buddhism came here in the 6th, 17th, 18th centuries through Mongolia. And it is worth noticing that the Tibetan Buddhism is very different from the classic teaching of Buddha, because it was pushed in Tibet, and there was the counteraction with the local religion, and it took a lot of things from that local religion in Tibet, a lot of magic rituals and practices that are not typical for the classical Buddhism. Also, the Tibetan Buddhism has a high role of Lama, the teacher, and it is considered that you can achieve salvation or liberation only with the help of Lama, and it is considered dangerous and even impossible to practice or do certain practices without a teacher. Another thing that distinguishes this from another form of Buddhism is the Institute of Living Buddhas, Toho, the Institute of Living Gods, and they incarnate into these higher gods. Dalai Lama is the head of them. Dalai is translated as the ocean, the sea. He is the main one. So we have a hierarchy. So there is Dalai Lama, Panchen Lama after him, and so on. And classic Buddhism has no such things. In our republic, those people who want to become lamas, they go to India, they learn, they study there, they study languages there for a long time, Sanskrit texts, for 12 and more years. And afterwards they come, and then they work, and they hold prayers, so they have these praying sessions in the language that people don't know. People have no idea what is being talked about, but people believe that if they listen to this prayer session, then everything will be fine in their lives. And these praying sessions are aimed mostly at the material goals, such as health, such as attracting luck, such as multiplying wealth, success in business, life prolongation, removing the bad eye, and so on. As we see, shamanism.
Could you hear us, Aiden? Wonderfully. And the information is really interesting that you're presenting right now. And frankly, the symbiosis that we've got from in the place of your living to Buddhism could actually be mixed with shaman culture, and the questions and the issues that people are presenting to the shaman or somebody else, or to the representatives of Buddhisms, they are material based usually, right?
Yes, everything's material.
Yeah, they house the wellness or something else. So we have the feeling that it's like the ferry of services, right? So there's just like you have a tent, you have the services, you just come by who wants whatever, and it's interesting. First of all, it's interesting that it works and that people are actually getting for that, even though the core of all those like approaches is just people being lazy, not being in the and not wanting to get to the depths of the things. But you've mentioned once that the Buddhism came to your lands, and for some reason there's a symbiosis of shamanism or something. And even Buddha mentioned for your for his actual students that you don't have to spend your spiritual forces for anything material based. And how interesting is that happened, what Marina mentioned, and what you mentioning, that the role of Dalai Lama. So they are, who are they? They are just the simple translators that just learn the language, more older or not existing at this moment, or allow themselves just because they know the language to pick a role of the spiritual leaders or mentors on the way. Maybe it would be appropriate just in case if they would say something right. But what you've mentioning before, they are moving people into the wrong way, wrong direction. And what's interesting that we would get to know, who did give them the right for that? To act that way, to place itself that way, and just to say to people, just because they somewhere, somehow have read or this is what I'd like to get to know. How did people react to that? Why do they don't have those questions?
Yes, this is the situation, the way the situation is. And you can also say that, well, people just say this is how the tradition is. People don't ask themselves these questions. They just go to temple and other people are there. They listen to these praying sessions and they believe that they will be fine after hearing these praying sessions. And in the end, I would like to summarize and say that the consumer format is very strong in our lives, in our society, and the consumer attitude towards religion is strong as well. And you can say that people turn to shamans and lamas as for like material services in shops. If you don't like a product or a service in one shop, you can go to another one. But the main thing is that people don't ask the main question. People, well, must understand that there is the higher purpose in life. And I personally, 2 or 3 years ago, went to see a lama or to shaman about some material issue I was having in my life. And in Buddhism and in shamanism, the goal is determined. You need to live a good life, you need to do good deeds, and then you need to be reborn in higher worlds. In other words, people do not ask themselves this spiritual question, and this spiritual aspiration of the person towards God is being redirected towards material, towards the rituals. This is the situation is.
Thank you.
Yes, really, this consumer format is very strong. It taught us to be afraid of God, not to love, but to be afraid of, and sometimes to address to Him with a wish of something material. And it's very terrible to see when, by the name of God, is used to and make some awful steps. And I offer you to look at to see another fragment from with Dr. Cohen, who will disclose this consumer format even more.
If you needed to have an intermediary with someone whom you love, how well will that relationship work? Setting up an intermediary is passing on responsibility, is making a breach in a relationship. One should strive in all relationships, I believe, to become as close to whatever that relationship is. And I don't think anyone can stand in the way of someone either. But we have so many people making claims. We have so many wars that have been fought in the name of the divine, for instance, that clearly, can't be the case. That so many people say that they understand, that they themselves are conduits, are intermediaries for something. Our second war in the Gulf, okay? Do you know the final reason that was given for us to go to war? George Bush came out of his office and said he spoke to his higher father, and he told him to go to war. Now, that's not a good enough reason for me personally, but if God speaks to me, I'll probably know it a little bit better. But you got to draw the line somewhere. People making all of these claims, give me money because I have a direct relationship with God. I can heal you. God gives me the power, so pay me. And we have people making millions and millions of dollars in different groups because people believe that and follow them because they themselves don't feel as though their relationship is close enough. So they go to other people that are charismatic, that take advantage of them. And this is a problem in our culture and has been for, many, many years, dating well back into the Middle Ages. Paying a priest to say prayers so that your loved one can go to heaven faster. Paying of indulgences. That's ridiculous. The person is dead. So these are people taking advantage of people, or with the spirituality movement in the beginning of last century, where people would have seances to try to get in touch with lost loved ones and pay people a tremendous amount of money to do so. And we have a lot of people who took advantage of these people. There is nothing wrong with any institutionalized religion. Nothing, except one thing. It involves human beings. Human beings who take advantage of that. Extremists, one way or the other. The teachings of all of these communities are fantastic. Live by them, but don't try to take advantage of them, which is very, very often the case. And that's by the people in the pew as well as the people on the pulpit. Both try to take advantage of it at different times. People, for instance, will try to make people feel guilty for doing something or not doing something. That's not what religion is about. Religion should be about fullness. As you put it, love. It should help people, not harm them. And it should be an avenue of peace, not one of pain or destruction.
Да, и вот знаете, так интересно, что доктор Коэн упомянул про войны, и ведь мы же знаем про вот это, что
Yes, and it's interesting that Dr. Cohen mentioned about wars, and we know that under the flag of God there were many wars, a lot of blood. But in this evangelium, Jesus never called for revolutions or wars. He called everybody brothers and sisters. How can you do something good to your brother or sister? And it's the most disgusting thing that by the name of God they do such disgusting things. Yes, I completely agree, and I was always interested to understand what patterns, what buttons are used when these mediators are working, how they parasitize, and why people agree to this. And I attentively listened to our participants, and I have drawn the following conclusion for myself for now. I understood that the most terrible thing that the most awful that these mediators play on is the inner need of each person of inner transformation and the unity with the spiritual world. And how this is substituted. It is substituted by the outer transformation and improving the life in the outer world. It is said to a person that he has to achieve something in this material world, power and influence. And the next moment that each person has this inner wish to serve to the spiritual world, both and also to the society, and how it is being substituted to service to one person, a priest, to fulfill all his needs and wishes, and how he talks to a person just this on his foolishness and his not willingness to study all these texts to understand himself. And it turns out who is to blame. It turns out that we are to blame because the wish to get something is dominated in us, but without any activities, any actions. And such schemes, how it works, how it is organized, they are completely identical, independent on what continent you will go to, what chronology time you will consider. The scheme is the same. It is completely working. It's perfect. It does not break from one century to another, from 1,000 years to another. It is repeated. And if person can understand and see it, it will be very simple to stop. And I would like to give an example from the cultural tradition Neruba, which is practiced in Nigeria, in Africa, and also it is spread in South America and other countries where people were brought to for hard labor. In this culture, it is considered that a person should find out its purpose of life. But I would like to specify what purpose. Purpose in the material life. For this, a great hierarchical structure exists. The structure of priests, sources, who can tell a person about his purpose. And by the way, each sorcerer has his own position. How it is identified? There is a pantheon. Let's call them angels. They are called
Они
Arisha.
отвечают за свою сферу.
They
Есть
have
ариши,
their
которые покровительствуют кузнечному
purpose.
делу.
They
Есть,
have
которые покровительствуют
particular spheres, for
животноводству.
example,
Есть покровительство бизнесу,
in
например, культуре.
farming,
И вот каждый шаман
in business. And, for example, each shaman has such a image of this Risha, and he is partly human and partly God. And it is considered that each person should address to a particular shaman and to find out from the Risha his or her fate. And for a long time, I couldn't understand the idea or why to give this knowledge, till we communicated with one professor, professor, the specialist in religions in Africa, and what he told us can be found in all books. But this understanding that he gave us, that people have, in people who live in Africa, honestly, it gave us a good way to think, and it gave us to understanding how deep this problem is, the problem that exists in this world, in our society. It turned out to be like this. Okay, yes, we have this pantheon of priests, but the main purpose of life is substituted. There is a lack of striving of a person, of any person, to his interconnection with God, and it is just substituted to returning to the reincarnation circle.
Infinite reincarnation is basically the goal that they are trying to accomplish.
Как и было упомянуто.
So that was very strange to hear. And they also mentioned there that...
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bueno, saludos para todos. Para seguir un poco con este tema de intermediarios y contarle un poquito cómo esto se contarle un poquito acá en la región. Quería buscar ejemplos de cómo estas personas
And to continue with the intermediary topic, I can say the following. So, in any case, I would like to give you an examples of how these intermediaries, how they use these intermediaries to act in the region of Latin America. So, usually, the religion is considered to be an opportunity so that the person could achieve spiritual world and God. But as time has passed, a lot of time has passed, all of this turned into more earthly things. And this is basically what we're talking about now. So we're saying that priests and shamans and leaders of any religion, they present their services not just as intermediaries between God and people, but they also provide something more. They consider themselves to be something more than intermediaries. They are sort of the doorkeepers that can get you to God, and they have the key to this door that nobody else has, no other person has, the key to the spiritual world. And also, so they say that we can come to God thanks to these intermediaries, rituals, amulets, talismans. And I'm certain that there is always such a notion as money when we are speaking about these things, about these intermediaries. In other words, we're speaking about something that is totally material. And I would like to give you a couple of examples of how it works in Latin America. So, of course, every religion has such, how do I say, such people that really strive for God. And we understand that there are a lot of intermediaries. And we can be speaking about the fact that since early 90s, such an environment started growing when a lot of unorthodox groups started emerging, and they were promoted by pastor superstars. And I'm speaking about a very famous Latin America program, and there are different names in Latin America that they have. So the prayer to the Holy Spirit, all the grace for everyone, but the main name of this program is to stop suffering. So the doctrines and the charter of this community is very much like the Bible, what the Bible says. but some of them are also about the doctrines of other religions. And this organization was excluded from the Portuguese alliance because of the economic exploitation of the poor. So this religion is quite strong in this part of Southern America. You can pray here, you can listen to praying sessions, and the essence is that you can get access to angels and spirits that will help you and solve your problems. Of course, in order to achieve this spirituality, you must gain something material. And I don't believe that any of this can get me closer to God, actually. And I would like to share with you that this has been happening in our region, and I have no understanding why God must appear before a person who is showing the flag or listen to this sort of his requests. What is kind of power are they selling us? So exorcism and removing demons is also makes people in this special state, and it makes people more vulnerable towards the attacks of the system. And I believe that actually this is a more serious topic for discussion. Other types of rituals are used by other religions in Latin America, such as Umbanda or Voodoo in Brazil and others. And Marina actually was mentioning one of such religions that is very similar to Umbanda, Yoruba. And this is a kind of this religion. And according to this religion, so it's all about the material aspects of the deceased people. And they have this opportunity, supposedly, to get the message from the world beyond, from Arisha. And Umbanda has intermediary gods, so they are Arisha, and they are in different regions. It's all about protection, and there are different kinds of hierarchy depending on the region and the intermediary. Also, in the organization, they call women and men as children of the blind, as sons of the blind, in order to show the structure in the religion. So it doesn't mean, so it means some responsibility before the person whom they serve, and also to the people for whom they are responsible. So there are a lot of rituals, for example, using drums, and there are some sacrifices, animal sacrifices, and sometimes even actual crimes are committed where people participate in order to interact with the forces whom they call. And I would also like to add that through such intermediaries, in my opinion, it is impossible to get closer to God. And I'm using these examples, I'm giving these examples because they are the most basic examples as far as using magic goes. And in some regions, it is more than evident. And there is a lot of evidence, there is a lot of proof that magic is used and witchery. And we can also speak about the fact that there are such peoples as whoppers. So like a shaman or a priest that does certain rituals, and this person is capable through some ritual to get a person back to life. So basically resurrect a dead person. Yes, this person will have no will. It will be a totally different person. But he does influence some he will influence some people around him. We understand that this ritual is being done based on certain ranks and so it's certain toxins are used, so neurotoxins are used that suppresses neuron channels, and it removes the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, and the pulse decreases, and basically people believe that they were dead, and then the burial ritual is taking place, and afterwards a person is being revived back to life. And we can speak about the fact that this person, supposedly, one could say, was dead, and this person relives this whole ceremony, and all of his relatives believe him to be dead. And then this priest, so-called priest, he digs him out the next day, and more drugs are given to him. This drug leads to a lot of hallucinations, and then the person goes to work at someone's home, for example, at a sugar plantation. And the people who practice this religion, it is very real to be turned into a zombie, and this is where intermediaries use their advantage. And I have a question, actually. So these people have the opportunity to make the choice who will reach God and who will make this connection with God. I can do the same thing, actually. And how can I come to God? Like making this decision, am I worthy or not? Will he resurrect me or not? I mean, we see that we see these things, and we see that people who really want to come to God, they have to use this way that evidently does not lead to God. And then you can ask the question, so who benefits from this? Who benefits in terms of spirituality or material things? And who needs this kind of format of religion? I will not deal into certain religions.
Esteban, muchas gracias, comrade. Thank you. Спасибо большое.
Спасибо, Thank you so much, Esteban. And it was really interesting information, but you understand that there's so much of that, and we need to comment on that, to specific portions of that. And right now, to have it more in the profound way to our viewers, we will turn on the fragment from the program with participation of Igor Mikhailovich Danilov that we have Angels Don't Fall. And yet again, Esteban, thank you so much. We're turning it on.
We would like to make this point clear.
I'll put it simply, when people don't know what they're talking about and they're just asking questions, naturally, the helpers get activated at this point, right? And the demons start teaching them who are angels and how are they existing. That's where their bunch of fairy tales this sort of come from. The total lack of understanding and ignorance, plus the pridefulness coming from the Satan. But who but the demons are able to persuade a person that he is superior to angel, that even God's supposed to serve him, right? Okay, so this is how it's done in religion, in the shaman culture. We've discussed it, but we still have information and participants who would open up for us the topic of mediators and the angelology, I would say for myself, so the knowers of the angels, what kind of services they also provide in our modern society. Robert, the word goes and the floor goes to
yes,
you.
as you said, there are not only religions where we can now meet these angels and encounter them, but there are all sorts of groups exist who actually organize seminars, or you can buy online courses there, and for a certain donation or a fee, they claim that they will teach you these magical abilities, so you can communicate with angels and make them work for you, so to say, and fulfill your wishes. Or on the other hand, they will offer you that you can go through them and they will present your wishes to the angels instead of you. And after all, angels are here to serve, as they claim. They're like genies. They even make hierarchies of angels. So which angel does what? A person without knowledge can very easily be trapped into these tricks. And one of the answers is, why is this happening? Is that we tend to pass the responsibility onto someone else. In this case, for our wishes, we're passing the responsibility to angels. And if it doesn't happen, well, is the angel to blame, not us? We have talked to a scientist who is engaged in this subject, and let's have a look what he has to say from the scientific point of view. So can we please have a video with Dr. Emil Palish?
Because nobody knows what it means, angel. And they have some experience, and then they like figure out something what they maybe read in some books and say, that was an angel, or that was Jesus Christ who spoke to me, or I don't know what yes, whatever he wants. Mostly it's only confused, that people do not understand what is it. They have some personal wishes which they want to fulfill. There is some guru who
also wants to fulfill
makes a self-realization, yeah, or make also money, so that he pretends to give them something valuable. But in most cases it's not. I ask, what should I do today? Should I go shopping or go to the church, or should I marry John or marry Fred? And then I wait what the pendulum does, and the spirit tells me this is wrong, because
and when they do it, and
this is a regression, because I do not develop my own force of knowledge of decision. I do not grow, but I want to only so that somebody tells me what I have to do, and this is wrong thing. And this is the false spirituality, which is very common, because it's very easy. You don't need to do anything, any effort. You only have some instruments, and the spirits will tell you, and you believe that these are some very intelligent and good spirits.
And if it doesn't work, you blame them.
Some very wise information, but usually it's not very wise information, and your life goes then slowly downstairs. Because it's not what really, so to say, what is really meant for us we should do. So the true spirituality is through my own self, that I must make the effort, I must develop my own forces, and only if I do this, if I make maximum what I can of my own human forces, only in that moment I can await that the real heaven helps me.
So, as you can see, they will try and do anything to help you somehow succeed, but basically they're only focused on their own interests, and they will teach you magic things. And we had such an experience, not only in personal life, but they will also try to sell it for the business. There was a product set up that we made in the past, and everything was prepared, all was set up so it would be successful. But then we realized what would be the cost. And so we decided not to do it this way. After all, human life and human health is much more valuable than to pay for it, for material things in this world. Another group of people that actually do that are channelers, for example. They claim to have a contact with some source, and again, for a fee and for a certain donation, they will tell you how many reincarnations did you have, how developed you are, and what can you do in order to succeed in this world. But basically, all this stuff are, again, we see a human pride getting involved, because when you learn that how good you are, you start to think about yourself, how great you are. And many people start doing that. So instead of working on themselves, they rely on somebody else to help them to fulfill their wishes. Some of these mediators made a successful business out of it. And one of the most famous one was Doreen Virtue, who was actually called Queen of Angel Work. So, but she was selling not only angel cards, board games, and made online courses, books, but then she realized, I think it was in 2017, that something was wrong. And I will quote from what she actually wrote about that. She said that when I was in the New Age, I thought that I was doing God's work because people said that they were comforted and helped by my cards. Now I realize that I was being used by the devil, and I have repented and renounced my old work. Other people still sell my old work against my request. However, much of it is going out of print, and my name has been removed from the products. She's asking people to throw away the cards and all those products because, as she said, it was not good. She also mentioned that calling on angel is dangerous because demons masquerade themselves as angels. And I used to think that calling on angels was correct because it seemed to result in wishes getting granted. Then I noticed that those granted wishes were like desert mirages, and that would soon disappear. They would also have something wrong with them. The new job would have serious issues, the new soulmate would have serious issues, and so forth. These demons give horrible guidance designed to ruin lives and guide people away from the real Jesus and the Bible. The Bible is filled with stories of angels, but in every one of those stories, the angels were sent by God. People didn't call upon angels in the Bible for a reason. Calling on angels can result inadvertently calling on demons who are posing as angels. So she actually realized that what she was doing was wrong, and this way she were trying to tell people and give them information so they don't make that mistake. It clearly shows that only a sincere work on oneself will enable a person to grow. And as a friend of mine used to say, why people, instead of consulting, for example, a business advisor, they go to angels to help them with the business. Let's see some fragment from video Angels Don't Fall with participation of Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Как можно разменять живое, вечное? Как можно вот эту любовь, вот эту жизнь настоящую променять на временную иллюзию?
How can we exchange what is living and eternal? How can you exchange this love and real life for a temporary illusion, for nothing? When you know that it's an illusion, how can and it's temporary? How can you exchange that which is everything and nothing? That's exactly written and told by these mediators, because they don't know the spirit world. It is told that there are those angels who fall and so on, but only by those who have never experienced God's love, who are as far from as heaven as earth as possible, as far from the God as heavens from earth. So I mean, those who didn't understand and didn't know. It's only them who can make this up, for they live by earthly. For them, deception-wise, the passing their body, pleasing their bodies and stomachs, exactly what's the entire lot. That's what life it is for them. To serve dust is a lot of dust. Isn't that so?
Various characteristics of mediators throughout the history. Now it would be great to have a look. Where did it actually started for our civilization? What was the root of it? Jason made a deep research on this. So Jason, on to you.
Скажите, пожалуйста, у нас заставочка будет или мы сразу Джейсону передаем слово?
So the floor goes to Jason.
Hello, everyone. So far, we've discussed a lot of interesting topics. A lot of it is rooted in this idea of the origination of consumerism. If one takes the time, as been discussed during this program, and looks at where it all started and performs an enormous hard work to look for this information, you can find that the people that are immortalized in our history books, the cultures that are immortalized in our history books, regardless of which continent you're on, all go back to Sumeria. What's interesting, when you look, there's these cultures that existed prior to this idea of consumerism, in which, using an English term called egalitarianism, people lived free and equal and contributed to each other's day-to-day life with honesty and purity from their hearts. This took place approximately 6000 BCE in what is known as the Haraph culture. What preceded the Haraph culture was the Ubaidian culture, the Ur culture, and Uruk cultures. Why do I mention these cultures? Is because all of these cultures who lived peacefully within our history text were summed up into just this giant Sumerian history and culture. And all that we're left with is what we see today and what we idolize today, these hierarchies of consumerism and these hierarchies of priests, military personnel, nobles, elites, if you will. And we keep talking about the origination of intermediaries. We're told the great advancements of our time started in Sumeria. Well, when you look at this time frame, thousands of years of peace occurred, and then suddenly at around 3000 BCE to 2500 BCE, what we have today can be seen there in artifacts and paintings and calligraphy, pictographs, showing that the nobles told people what to do, and the nobles answered the king. And the king acted as an intermediary between the people and God and told them what God's wishes were. But prior to this point, there was no one telling people what to do. People lived with love and people lived with kindness, and they put their creativity into their works. And much of what's yet to be discovered is still underneath layers and layers of dirt. Now, we've talked about consumerism this whole time. We've talked about angelology. We've talked about intermediaries. But how did that happen? Well, under the consumer mindset of desiring power and money, we took the information found in Babylonia and we applied that same information looking back at the cultures. So here today in 2020, when one looks back under the lens of consumerism, they only see that signs and symbols mean what the Babylonians said they meant. And to give an example of that, one only has to look in the book Alatra by Anastasia Novik and see the simple sign of the cross. The sign of the cross is supposed to represent the human energy structure and the human being, but using Babylonian information, it's supposed to mean sheep. And that is just a simple substitution of how quickly over thousands of years things can be forgotten and people mimic things they don't know, because it's easier to give responsibility to someone else than to perform that hard work. I challenge everyone to look into these cultures, and I wish I had more of these archaeological finds, but unfortunately a majority of them were left to grave diggers and amateur archaeologists of their time. Thank you.
Джейсон, спасибо тебе большое. Очень верно заметил Джейсон про передачу наследия.
Jason, thank you very much. Thank you very much about the inheritance. That's what you mentioned. And I suggest that we watch another fragment of the Angels Don't Fall video with the words of Игорь Михайлович Данилов.
Кстати, вот, за ад под землей это ж тоже следствие как раз.
By the way, regarding the underground hell, it is also a consequence of those very Atlanteans, while the rest of the remaining Atlanteans who were driven underground. Hence, there is again an understanding that when, for certain reasons, the happy world of equality and love ended, and this consumerist format started emerging, naturally, the descendants of Atlanteans came out from the underground, and they gained power. And many things still develop according to those laws since that time. And if we look at history, we can see what an outburst of cruelty, evil, and everything else took place. Such a human-hating order was formed. This is also true.
Yes, dear friends, and I can say that in historical science I read a lot of things, but what Igor Mikhailovich mentioned, it was a shock for me, a real revelation that the Atlanteans lived underground, who went outside. At some point in time, they were driven inside underground, but then they were able to pass the information to Sumerians. And I was trying to recall where I heard this information from. Basically, we can read the myth of Metek of Enlil. It was the Sumerian chief god who made a hole in the earth, and people were starting coming from underground. This whole story was also praised in the Irida myth. It's about the first city of human civilization. Basically, we can talk a lot about Sumerian legends and myths about the underground kingdom, and I think we will talk about this separately. We discussed this with Jason a lot of times, but please join us, dear friends, because the more we watch, the more we look through such information, the better we understand. So we need every person to look through all this. Basically, I want to mention that in historical science, researchers always say that they don't know much about the Sumerians and about ancient cultures. If we look about the monographs about the Sumerians, everybody, all historians write that they just assume. And even this historical context, how can we understand the society of 5,000 millennia before Christ if we don't understand ourselves nowadays? I also would like to mention that history of Mesopotamia was started to be studied only about 50 years old. So basically, it's the earliest history for study. I looked through plenty of literature about these early times, as Jason has mentioned, about the Sumerians, Akkadians, etc. But the very point is that actually historians don't know much, nearly almost nothing about them. Actually, even the emergence of Sumerians is under dispute. And at some point in time, in millennium, fourth or third millennium BC, actually they disappear as a nation. So the scientists try to understand what kind of Sumerian language is that on the tablets and on the cuneiform tablets. And when I read the text translated from the cuneiform writing, I was amazed of how many facts are here regarding the mediation of priests between gods and people. And actually, these gods images were used for priests to keep power of people. How they managed to do this? Because historians say themselves that in Sumerian country, they actually transformed the farming into a city civilization, an urban civilization, and this way came in a large number and lived densely. It was easier for us to control them. So we actually detect the facts of consumerism among people at that time. Already at the end of 5th millennia BC, we see that before that there was no rigid hierarchy, but then there appeared administrative and temple complexes for priests and for the administration. And basically, for the administration of the cities, there were slaves and there were some workers. But when I found, the Uma text, I was shocked because although I had the historical education, for the first time in my life, I read about concentration camps in Sumer. Just think of this, it's 4th millennia BC, and these camps were attributed, assigned for the captives, for military captives, women and children. And basically from cuneiform tablets, we can find that when a person came to the concentration camp, gone to such a camp, they all described, and even Soviet archaeologists wrote about this in the 1950s. Basically, it shows that the Sumerians followed the same concentration camp model as the Nazis were doing. This is such an interesting information, and it's such amazing because in the all speaking English-speaking internet, there are many researchers of Sumerians, and everybody's talking about their superiority and how they were marvelous, what a marvelous nation they was, that they were the best, they were better than ourselves. I don't know whether it's possible, but everyone is saying how wonderful that society was and how advanced they were. So what you're talking about this, rigid hierarchy is, it's a shocking information, and we have to talk about this. We have to notify people about this. Thank you, Nastya. We all discussed this with you, and really, I can give a number of examples, but really we should open our eyes and read the original text and understand what really took place. Why was it possible? Because basically the first cities appeared as a political units in Sumerian nation. And archaeologists write that Sumer cities had parliaments, 2 chambers of parliaments. It's not British who invented the parliament with 2 chambers, but actually in the Sumer, they already had the council, the chamber of the fathers of the city and the youngsters of the city. And also they elected the people's deputies, so-called, as we call them nowadays. But it's not because there were free people or equality between people, but because the priests allowed this and the rulers followed their rules, because priests allowed some people to be rulers. And also there was a jury, elected jury, in order to justify the actions of those priests. Also, we see the same in Ur. Ur is the largest city of Sumer, and 100,000 people lived there. It was such a large scale. It actually reminds us of the contemporary megapolises and urbanization, the achievements, so-called achievements of the 20th century. And all people actually served the priests. How this was achieved? There was stable consumption in the cities, and this allowed priests to use resources which were renewable. Archaeologists detected such a situation that since 4th millennia BC, farming technology had changed revolutionary. Harvest achieved 500 to 1000%. And in the 21st century, there are no such yields, crop yields, but the Sumerians already had this. Where did they take such technology from? And also, we understand that when there is such high crop yield in the Sumerian society, there are many hungry people. Why didn't they supply them with food? So archaeologists find this with the remains of this culture, and this looks a lot like our situation in the contemporary society when we have famine in many countries. In the Sumerian country, there were governments, there were ministries, and let's take Uruk. It's the state of the end of the 4th millennia BC. We saw that priests already became active mediators in order to transmit the image of God and manipulate people. How they used it? They used figurines with praying people. In the temples, there were images of some elite people. They prayed not to God, but to a person, living person. Also, there are some images of important persons, which really looks like our, images of saints in Christianity. And basically, king's rule was not allowed without the priestly permission. And kings always sacrifice big gifts to the temples, and they reconstructed and built temples in the cities. Also, archaeologists have detected that Sumerians had contacts with the divine world. Which way? Through feasts and banquets. So feasts and banquets were sacred action for Sumerians, through which the community could support contact with the divine world. An example of what was happening, actually the rulers become gods. We used to think that ancient peoples used to have gods and pantheons of gods, but in the 3rd millennia BC, the Gudea ruler was deified. Does this remind you of something? And people sacrifice not only animals, but also people to Gudea. And actually, priests they supported human desires. And rulers, in order to be worthy and to be appointed by God, they built temples, because priests said that if you build a big temple, you will be equal to priests. Also, priests invented another form of getting wealthy. They invented agreements and contracts with rich families. And now we see how these multinational corporations operate. Now, as friends mentioned, the hierarchy of gods was built according to the hierarchy of people. It was this way 4,000 millennia BC and in the century which we are living in now. Do you know the case in India? We see the same in Sumer in the 4th millennia BC, when every rank of the deity was complying with the groups of city population, and riches and poor people were like sacred. This caste was sacred and established. And we see in Sumer that the consumerism was very high. The inventions which we used them, there was also mass media, which we have now. And at that time, this mass culture was in the form of addressing gods, singing songs to God's praise and rituals, because consumerism became a routine stuff, and people agreed to that. Why? Because priests promised that by their help people will overcome the fear of death because they will pre-cultivated this consciousness of people, and archaeologists admitted that if we read normal articles on history, all this is described there, not like in Wikipedia. And for example, it is said there in the historical sources that you can achieve heights, spiritual heights, if you overcome death and overcome your own destiny. But if we go down to the earth, Sumerians also had technologies. Yes, we praise Sumerians because many of their inventions we still use, but there was no access to resources, people. There are hungry people, poor people, and many social disasters of the 20th and 21st centuries basically were the same 6,000 years ago. Although the technologies we use, they were not in the benefit of society. I also would like to mention that in more detail you can find about the Sumerians, of course, in the video.
Sumerians in the civilization, the first in the history, priest rulers, the first wars, the first sacrifices, intermediaries between God and people, priests. They made the human life worth nothing, and this has been happening for more than 6,000 years in the history of humanity. Today, we see what it has led to. There is nowhere else to go. It is time to bring people the truth, to bring the main value to people, human life.
Natalia, thank you very much. I was shocked with the information you provided. But for me, the most interesting point is that this, communication at that time was closed, but right now it's the same. We don't know what is happening among priests, among rulers, and what the Roman Pope is doing in the Vatican. People just don't know what they do for sure. And we are proud of something, but actually Sumerians had the same 6,000 years ago, and we adopted the worst things from them. And it's just a shock for me. It's a shock content.
Yes, it's completely true. And can I add something else? Natalia mentioned the topic that this development happened unexpectedly, suddenly. So such civilizations, and people can think only Sumerians can do this, but actually not. When you start studying this question, you can understand that there are such evidences on Crete, which before 3,000 years BC, it was quite a peaceful settlement, Neolithical kind, where people lived together, had a rest, they had stone tools, but anyway, they had a good life, they had different kind of things, polished stones, but suddenly out of nothing, a beautiful city appears, which is called Knos, which is described as one of the greatest mystery of the world, because the transition from Neolithical way of life of Bronze Age to Bronze Age, it wasn't. It just happened suddenly, and scientists still think how this Minoan period appeared, how this Minoan civilization appeared, because it is known by its palace cities. And probably you know this story about Minotaurs. This labyrinth was built there, which is now investigated by scientists. But the most interesting fact, we will touch upon labyrinths later, but the most interesting fact is that the transition from the peaceful existence where people lived in peace, where they were farmers, where there were no wars, no conflicts, to such way as Sumerians lived. It didn't happen only there, but it happened everywhere in the world, practically at the same period of time. In what way? But how? The scientists ask this question, but there is a question to this answer. And I have such a question. We're talking about fact that firstly people lived happily, but then Sumerians brought technologies. Does it mean that technologies and hostile society, they are like neighbors, or can it be different? At least these two examples talk about the fact that technologies bring evil, but not. Yes, Marina, go on. I think that technologies are just tools, and how you will use it, it depends on your mentality and your. And we see, thanks to Natalia's information, that mentality that came to this fruitful lands of Mesopotamia, Crete. Yes, they brought technologies. Yes, they taught people to do something. But what was the price? These tribes which came, they brought fear, war, slavery. This is a problem, but not technologies at all.
Yes, it's a very precise observation because we need to understand what kind of values a person has who comes with this technology, and probably at that time such people with bad intentions, they just won. I will just add a little bit because a simple fork can become a weapon. You can kill a person with that, but you can also eat food with the fork. Depends on what internal impetus is to that and how you use this technology for which purpose.
Yes, I also wondered about this period of transition. How could it be just in 1 second, such a change from a peaceful way of life to this nightmare, which was described above? And I started to look for information in different sources, starting from historical documents and legends and ending with geology. And if we talk about Sumerians, I would like also to touch upon the ancient Indian legends, and I found the information about the Nag kingdom, which is hidden in mountains, by the way. And these under earth people, they are snake people, they live under the land, underground, and their main feature is that not only that they had very many treasures, but they cannot feel human feelings. They cannot get warm, and that is why they steal warm, both spiritual and body warmth from other people, and that is direct characteristics of those that at one moment when this spiritual point was a little bit weakened, they brought this slavery and consumerism to peaceful lands. And there are many legends, and in each region, in each culture, there are such legends, and the short characteristics of these inhabitants there. I will underline one point. They are considered to be people who started their lives long before the humanity. There are humans and there are they, and they were saved underground. For some reason they went underground, but because of the global catastrophes. They have much knowledge, very deep knowledge, also handicrafts, and they are very hostile to humans. And I started to wonder and wanted to go deep and go underground and to see how the inhabitants look like and where they used to live, or maybe they still live. And NASA researchers, together with French scientists, they took photos from satellites that show that there is a net of gigantic tunnels. They penetrate all through the Earth. They connect continents, also waterways. It's a great network. It is not studied, unfortunately, even a little by the scientists, and because of some reasons which are not mentioned. And the information appeared, which we found out not long ago, that there are tunnels on the moon, and there is a very detailed map of these tunnels and the plan how it can be developed, how it can be profitable for our civilization. But the question is, why can't we research those tunnels which are literally beneath our feet? And then I addressed to researchers of speleologists, enthusiasts who all over the world go down to tunnels, who they are allowed to go down. Most tunnels, which when they are found, they are immediately blocked or are not allowed to enter, and everywhere they are characterized by the same way that I will quote direct words by speleologists. They mention that all people are penetrated by tunnels, and one specific feature is that they edges are so smooth and flat that they resemble glass, but they are made of rock and incredibly solid. Tunnels often have a specific melted surface. In the walls, ventilation ducts are made. It is said that these technologies which those builders who build these tunnels had, we don't have, and modern science cannot explain them. But anyway, it can use them. For example, the photo that you saw before on our screen, the walls seem to be that it has or brick walls. And there is another interesting research which was under secret for a while, but in 90s it started to be known. In 1950s there were works to build a channel for a railway which will connect the island Sakhalin, and when the secrecy was eliminated, then the doctor Berman mentioned the description, and I will also read her ideas. We did not build, but we rebuilt the tunnel which existed in the ancient times, and it was built very profoundly and very correctly. Some findings were mentioned in the tunnels, some creatures, but then suddenly everything was hidden in the special services. Yes, we can find something, we can use it for our purpose, but officially it cannot, they are not proved. It is not proved that such a fact in history as tunnels really exist. But why? Because tunnels, it's a puzzle which will show that that is a missing detail, which will show us how consumerism could shown up in seconds and change the peaceful way of life into slavery, wars, and conflicts.
I should use this opportunity, and I would like to ask Natalia, why only alpinists study some discoveries? Where is science, Natalia? Where is mainstream science? But science is also there. It appears that people, there are some widespread websites, and archaeologists also are included in these elite, structures. They have government funding, but for example, Alina was talking about the Crete, and basically they detect the same information about processing of stones, about technologies, but in science, the main point is which method you use to prove something and the evidence base. For me, it was very important regarding these tunnels and underground cities. Probably the Atlanteans were living there, actually, and this is the basic question.
Guys, do you have sound? Okay, wonderful. Do you know what? What is interesting is not the question who actually investigates or researches, whether it's enthusiasts or these are representatives of modern scientists, but what conclusions they make afterwards, because many of you have actually encountered this and met such materials, such works that were published, and let us be honest, there were many assumptions. There are many assumptions that are really not correct, not true. So there are facts, there are discoveries, but when they start to describe it and try to make attempts to understand, it's far from being the truth. So, but what is the meaning and essence of all these assumptions, not quite correct ones, is the format of thinking. When people find some object, like domestic subject, they start to explain it like, how can we use it nowadays? So it turns out that those objects, those items, and those format of domestic living, which were used for spiritual purposes, people with material way of thinking, with consumer way of thinking, they start to explain with such an abracadabra. So we need to also remember this, not to forget. So it's not just the question, not who actually investigates, but with which purpose, I would say that, and who actually deciphers it. So that's what is important. Thank you.
But I would really like to emphasize such a point that many researchers, amateur researchers, just as Marina mentioned, they say that underground and on the earth in general, there are so many things not studied or understudied. But basically, for most people in the official sources, this information is not spread. We mostly read about the classical history, which begins with Sumerians, and that's it. And people are ready to fly to the moon and study something there, but we have so much underground and under the ocean waters, and we don't know a lot about this. We have to study it.
Can you imagine how uncomfortable it is? Yes, it is known that it really exists, and when they are found, they are directly demolished or hidden.
Exactly. I wanted to share such a point. We were going to interview one blogger, and he said that he found traces of Atlantis. In the beginning, it was a road made of plates, and it could be traced from Google Maps. It looked like a road not far from, it's like a corner of the Atlantic Ocean, and actually he attributed it to Atlantis. He copied these images, and now he looked that there are no plates. It looks like the sea, and nothing is visible. So who covers all this, and who needs this?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, guys, very nice. Since we've touched upon the topic of the submerged cities, the fact that this is a diverse network and it's all around the world, let's listen to the information that comes next. And Esteban, we give the mic to you.
¿Qué tal? Bueno, sí, un poquito más. Esto me ayudaron mis compañeros de aquí a
Hello.
sobre esto, y hay muchos autores que escriben sobre este tema.
Several authors provide references on this topic. Okay.
So the guys have prepared some interesting information about underground cities, and the girls have been saying that this is a part of history. It is a part of archaeology, but I would like to comment on the status of these findings, and I would like to quote some books in this regard. So I would like to tell you about the most famous books. So there is this book, The Gold of Gods, and Eric von Däniken, the famous writer, mentions that under the South American continent there is a gigantic system of tunnels, several thousand kilometers long. Legends are told about intraterrestrial cities, and photos are shown of tunnels in the Central American region, as well as various artifacts from an unknown culture. So here are their images. Also, Karl Brugger says that there are some parts of South America are crossed by artificial underground passages. And in his book, The Chronicle of Akakor, 1976, we can see photos, maps, and sketches of intraterrestrial cities are shown, and the most important of which is Akakor. So this city tells the story of the Mongolian Uga tribe. And as they see it, as they tell it, and they mention those who have historical records from 13,000 years ago. And then they point at some interesting facts. The name of this tribe can literally be translated as the people chosen by gods. It tells of the first great catastrophe, which, according to their records, occurred in 10,468 BC. And if we multiply it 2020, year 2020, then we'll receive the figure 12,488. So this process occurs approximately every 12,500 years. So we have 12 years left, basically. In other words, we're very close to these changes. Return of the gods more than 5,000 years ago, who imposed themselves through the brothers, Lhasa, the chosen son of gods, and Saman. You can also see it in the image. In all the great cities on the surface. The same date that we mentioned when we speak about the Sumerians. Also, the construction of Machu Picchu by order of Lhasa. It is mentioned as a fortress temple, and the arrival of Hispanics is mentioned, the Spaniards, a reason why the entrances to the great interterrestrial cities are covered. Also, the Germans arrived to these lands in 1932 until 1945. Also, this book shows images of the alphabet completely not known. The next author is Javier Sierra. He's a well-known modern Spanish writer, and he has the book In Search of the Golden Age. He confirms there and demonstrates that the main churches of Cusco, Peru, and they were built on top of ancient Inca temples, are connected to each other by a network of interterrestrial tunnels that extend beyond Peru. Moreover, they are aligned on 45-degree line in relation to the equator, which in its turn is directly related to the path traversed in the Andean lands of the civilizing god of the Incas, Viracocha. Also a little bit from Jose Trigueirinho Neto. So he's a Brazilian writer who, in his books, Ergs in a World, Miztlitlan, A World That Awakens, and others, he also refers to intraterrestrial cities around the world connected to each other through tunnels. It is worth mentioning that the concept of Ergs is quite well known in Argentina, a supposedly intraterrestrial city located under the Uritorco Hill. So this is Cordoba, province city in Argentina. It is important to mention that nowadays there are many substitutions and distortions regarding the subject of the interterrestrial cities. And from the fact that all kinds of fantastic beings, intraterrestrial beings, and others still live there, to the fact that there are actually cities that are housed in other parallel dimensions, which can be accessed through a portal in these areas. So people need to know that nowadays those places are kind of like magic rituals are there, but people do not treat us as history. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Excellent. So what's the question? Thank you very much, Esteban. That's probably all in Spanish. Okay. Guys, we have Jason who wants to add some info on this. So, Jason, please go ahead.
Все хорошо, все будет просто, да, сейчас еще послушаем Джейсона.
Okay, you will. No problem, but we'll listen to Jason too. No worries.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to add to what everyone has discussed so far about these topics and how vast they are. And these underground cities aren't really discussed, but they all have a common root in all of the mythologies of the ancient peoples. And maybe collectively we can have another discussion regarding just these topics about Sumer and underground cities. Thank you. Thank you, Esteban.
Да, всем добрый вечер. Как раз хотел сказать, что очень интересно, что информацию можно найти, но почему-то
Good evening to everyone. I just wanted to say that you can find this information, but a lot of things are kept silent. And actually, there are a lot of confirmations that humanity has been developing not in the way we are taught in schools. And our children have been taught in schools as well. Well, I read some books by Graham Hankin, and then I got interested in these underground cities. And in his books, Graham studies different civilizations, and he speaks about the fact that humanity has forgotten about our past, and some people wouldn't benefit if we remember our past. So after reading these books, I still had no clear picture where these underground cities came from and what was their real purpose. And actually, the video Angels Don't Fall, with the participation of Igor Mikhailovich Danilov, has shown a new light and has explained so many things to me. So let us speak about this Mayan underground kingdom called Xibalba. And a lot of things is said about this, and Popol Vuh describes it. So this is an epic book in the American culture. So it is associated with, it's like a place under the surface of the earth, associated with death and ruled by the gods of death or powerful rulers known as the Lords of Xibalba. And Esteban has been mentioning the tunnels that connect different countries. And it is also believed that one of the entrances is placed in the Nachtunich, Guatemala. And in the Mayan language, it means a stone house. Actually, more than 100 caves have been discovered with the Mayan images on those caves. Some people say that the entrance to these caves is near the Belize, but actually, besides these languages, besides this evidence, a lot of galleries and underground settlements have been found in the Ural, Altai, Tibet, Ecuador, South America, Australia, the United States, and you can continue with this list for a very long time. Let us have a look at the most interesting one, Deringu and Gamma Cliff in Turkey. So this is a network of underground caves that connect Peru, El Salvador, and Santiago, and also Tuanshan and Nepal. So basically, these places are united by the fact that these, so scientists confirm that these places are artificial. You can see the way the stone was polished. It was processed, and what you see on the screen now is Turkey. The region that is placed in the Cappadocia region, and now more than 36 underground settlements have been found, and this area is up to 2.5 to 4 square kilometers, the total area of this settlement, underground settlement. And if we remember Graham Hankin's book, The Magic of Gods, the book speaks about the underground cities that were built before the Younger Dryas, the last Stone Age set in. And the purpose of building these cities was to save the civilization during the catastrophe. Also, it is known that the Noah's Ark finished its journey on the Ararat, on top of the Ararat mountain. And now, as a result of this, Turkey has this, and Turkey has a common border with Iran, with ancient Persia. So basically, all these different countries were connected. And interesting about Derinkuy is that it goes deep down to 85 meters, and archaeologists say it's this place was built 7 to 8 centuries ago, or 7th to 8th century, but we think that it is much, much older. 13 levels, and up to 20,000 people can be hosted by this city. There are stairs, and there are different ways how to reach one level or another. And these huge megalithic sliding stones that can cover entrance to the caves are also there. Also, what's interesting is that there is ventilation there that connect the surface with these caves, and they function so well that you could feel the breath of fresh air at the depth of more than 85 meters. Let's also have a look at another fact, the fact that there are also columns there. There are huge caves there, and you can see that there is room for cattle, for wine. So the labyrinth is huge, and it was impressive, and it would be impressive even if they built it above the ground. But can you imagine it was built below the ground in hard rock? And as far as I understand it, when this place was flourishing, the city had everything you could wish for, everything for a normal life. And not far from Derinkuy, there is Kaymakli, and these two cities are connected with a 9-kilometer tunnel. And Kaymakli has 8 levels, and it has another set of halls and corridors. And all of this construction is made in volcanic rock, and there is also ventilation there. And so these ventilation passages have the function of fresh water reservoirs, and air circulation functions such a way that everywhere there is a certain temperature, and just like in Derinkuy, you could have blocked all the entrances and exits with huge stones. And let's have a look at Peru and Ecuador. In Morona Santiago, they found an entrance by an Argentinian scientist, Juan Morris, and through a gigantic entrance in a rock, you can get below down to 250 meters, and there are tunnels of correct shape. They have the turn of the correct shape, and it all means that these passages were made by humans. Also, there are ventilations. There are ventilation shafts, and they're placed at the distance of 70 centimeters. And there are also huge halls that you can compare to modern conference rooms. Besides, there were some metal plates with texts that are very unique. I think we had some images with the text. So here they are. Thank you. Thank you for showing.
Alexei, do you know anything what is said about these texts?
Unfortunately, not yet. But again, all of this information, as we have unearthed as a result of our studies, all this information is not publicly commented on or even published.
It's not the Sumerian or any other known language. Basically, this is not deciphered yet. How? It's not possible to decipher them.
Yeah, how do you decipher them? People don't know yet. But let us go to Shanxi province in China. And there is a mountain there, 2,130 meters, Huashan Mountain. It is one of the top 5 Tao religion. It is worshipped by this religion. And there are also rooms there. And the largest of them is 12.5 square kilometers. So, and you can see pools and columns and even bridges above the streams. So the amount of rock that was taken from these to build these constructions is huge. There are also vertical shafts with different steps. I think we had it in the next slide, but let us have a look at this slide. Let's continue with China. Just imagine this 500,000 cubic meters of rock that was taken, but this is 2.5 times less than in other caves. The caves in China as well, and they were discovered in a very accidental way. So just people got some water out of the local well, and they discovered this amazing caves. And they have these caves have buildings that that have these amazing structures that you can see in the image. Now, let's go to Nepal. In Nepal, there is a unique structure of 10,000 caves in the northern Nepal. And previously, Mustang, the ancient kingdom, was placed there, was located there. So we know that these caves are tens of thousands years old. But the question is, how did their creators got to the entrance of 100 meters? Because this is the height of basically these structures. And we're looking at these beautiful rooms, and we see that there is light. But previously, in ancient times, how was light getting in there? Because we know that people lived there for a long time, and we were unable to find anything. But the Graham Hanking book has a passage from Zoroastrian text. It's these books speak about the artificial light, some artificial windows that shine light. We have not discovered these technologies in the underground cities, but I think that if all of us start looking, then we will be able to find some information. And to sum it all up, I would like to say the following. So, being certain that I'm certain that people were unable to create these ideas on their own, and now we have an explanation of what is happening and a full picture. And it is very important to get all the historical information in order not to make the same mistakes. Thank you very much.
Yes, I would like also to add some information to Alexei. It was interesting to investigate this question, these underground tunnels and underground cities. And when I faced that there is much information about it, and I understood that it is not talked about at schools, and this information is not given to us anyhow. And can you imagine that a researcher who discovered such a tunnel or underground city, he should be world famous. But where are these people? In most cases, they are not mentioned about. And any information that they discovered, we can find in their books or in YouTube videos, in short articles, which they personally publish. As Janis said, I like his idea very much to investigate it together. And when we start to compare all the information that we all found, that we can see that all characteristics are the same. And what is striking that these underground cities, they are man-made, but at the same time they are done with megalithes, which nowadays are not cannot be used anyhow with our modern technologies. And also the walls, it can be also very striking. Different kinds of ideas and views that we have, and very long halls, which are also quite striking. And I could also say that there is a network, giant network all around the world, and technologies which are used inside, they're also unique. For example, I also found the information that this system is so complicated, which on the one hand was a sewage system, but on the same time it was like a well, and people can take water from it. It was also like a conditioner to preserve a particular temperature there. It is completely striking. And there are many cities which can be talked about, and I would like to touch upon some interesting places. For example, Naur, that is in France. There are photos. We are going to see them. It's a 2-kilometer long tunnel and 33 meters wide, and 3,000 people could live there. And there are some proofs that they actually lived there. And other underground cities, they were even churches there. And Naur is particularly interesting because, and oh yes, we can also see another slide which has maps, the system of system of ventilation, and scientists cannot understand how it was organized. The smoke was inside, but it was not poisonous for people, and special technologies were used which created a particular microclimate. And what about light? It's very hard to live underground without light. But people could live there not just centuries, but thousands of years. And scientists also described some interesting constructions which cannot be understood from the technological point of view nowadays. In the soils of Iran, there is a small island Kish, where there is under it there is a underground town, and it's just difficult to imagine how this construction could be built. What is more, I was also like to mention Hyper here. It is situated on Malta. There is a city Paola, and under this city there are tunnels and towns which are under this town, and it is actually widely known town, but in particular circles, because when we want to know more about this, then we can, when we talk about this, we find out some information about this town, because this town consists of 3 layers, which is one above another, which was built 2,000 or 3,000 years BC, where more than 7,000 corpses were found, and also different artifacts. This is only the upper layer, which could be investigated. Lower layers cannot be studied. Each person who tried to go there, it was very difficult for them to go down. And what they could found, some particular scientists showed us that there were special, unique acoustics. Just imagine, the sound is 110 hertz, and it's a sound which makes a person under hypnosis. And another striking fact that under this town there is a mirror reflection of the temple which was on the surface. It is a complete copy, but under the ground. And according to scientists, inside this town there is a pyramid which is upside down, And what is more, adding some information to Natalia's ideas, that Sumerian civilization started unexpectedly, and this consumer society developed very fast. Hyper here, there is such an evidence of scientists when they built the third level, they all left this place completely unexpectedly. Just when this construction was finished, this place was completely empty. But scientists found the path which are under the sea, and they went to Italy. And these paths are completely safe, which preserve the climate. And in this tunnel, there were some devices which also preserve photosynthesis. There are different achievements, but actually characteristics of each of such cities. There is a church. So also the proof that there were hierarchy, and the proof that on upper level people lived better. So there were governors, and they were people who served them, and also proves that not only religious services but also sacrifices were practiced, and this all is an evidence of a consumer society that later people saw on the surface, and it makes us think what people brought up when they went out from this underground, and the fact that they came out of these underground cities, it's not a secret. Or we just should look for proofs not in the official books, but in some legends. For example, in some legend, there is information that some people came from underground, that they have blue eyes and they were immortal. They did not die in their own death. It's a proof that they preserve some high technologies, and also in legends of China and India, they prove that they share technologies, and it proves that they were like gods. What I would like to add more, not only historians, altruists were interested in these places and found information about them through legends and eposes of people. For example, we have facts that there are facts that people who organized such an organization as Anhenerbe, they believed that after the catastrophe, Atlantis, people who came, who were the ancestors of great civilization, they inhabited the underground, and their rulers, basing on these legends, organized the expeditions there, where they could find some remnants of Atlantis. I would like to offer to show the video from the video.
All right, all right. The Atlanteans were, so to speak, as bureaucrats, civil servants. They were regarded as Atlanteans, meaning his messengers. But again, after the destruction of Atlantis, many still remained in this world. And they partly preserved this knowledge. There were a lot of records and a lot of everything. The technology was preserved. We also know that, well, why go far? That very Lhasa, such a library, let's say, that stored. That's why Hitler, in his time, and not only him, but many people from other countries tried to buy it or whatever, and they actually got a lot of knowledge from there, real knowledge. Real knowledge. That which we use today technologically. Construction of those very rockets and a lot more. That's a fact which is already publicly available and well known. A lot of various gadgets and everything else, video cameras, well, many things.
Does it mean it was Shambhala's knowledge?
No, it's not Shambhala's knowledge. No. What does Shambhala have to do with that? As for Shambhala, it's more spiritual. This is more serious. Well, this one is an ordinary library. Let's say what had remained and survived after that Atlantis was stored in one place. And certain people were appointed by the ones you mentioned. They were faithful, they were obedient, and they were appointed as custodians of this library. And later, pridefulness, they exalted themselves, they called themselves almost rulers of some sort, men of secret knowledge and so on. And then they reached the point when they started selling this knowledge. Well, it's no secret. When caravans loaded with gold came to them from that fellow Hitler, and not only him, and they were paid for papers. So what, in your opinion, my friends, were they so stupid, these representatives of the Anhenerbe, that they brought caravans with gold to get a pair of ancient parchments? No, not stupid. That's how it all developed.
Всем здравствуйте. В дополнение к тому, что говорила Алина и Игорь Михайлович.
Hello, everyone. In addition to what Alina was talking about and Igor Mikhailovich right now in this fragment of the video from the Angels Don't Fall video, I would like to share very interesting facts relating to such organization Anhenerbe. Actually, the Anhenerbe organization is the German Society for Studying Ancient German History and the Heritage of the Ancestors. This organization was established in 1935, but until 1940, Himmler, one of the organizers of this structure, he included Anhenerbe in the structure of SS, the elite military organization established by Hitler. And so the purpose of this organization was to study the roots of German nation and also to search for proofs which would tie the German origin with the Aryan, with the Aryans, with this ruling race, which, originated from one of the highly developed civilizations. The representatives of these civilizations, such godlike creatures called Aryans, actually, it's also described as a Nordic race, a Norse race. Actually, they managed to survive after the cataclysm in Atlantis, and they spread all over the earth towards the Asian continent. It was assumed that Atlanteans still exist, and they hide somewhere deeply in caves in Tibet. And actually, the activity of this group was in the expeditions to Tibet. May we have a picture on the screen right now? We have this collage, and basically what they did is archaeology, studied fauna and flora and local population in Tibet, as we can see in this image on the left. But also Anhenerbe members tried to look for ancient manuscripts, artifacts that could provide Nazi Germany some, real special knowledge of ancient races. And I would like to share very interesting piece of information from the first expedition to Tibet. At the end of 1930, in the Himalayas, Kulu Valley, an expedition was sent of 5 people. They tried to find an underground city. They haven't discovered it, but Bayer, one of the participants of the expedition, he brought an ancient manuscript hidden in a wooden box, round box and cylindrical box. This manuscript contained the knowledge about the Earth, the history of Earth, and also the technical particularities of certain aircraft. Into a number of researchers, the information in this manuscript actually was used by the Third Reich in order to create disc-of-line machines, disc aircraft that were advanced for the 20th century. And the highest glitches were shown by this aircraft V7. Can we bring back the picture on the screen? Yeah, here you can see this aircraft had a shape of a disc, and the radius of this disc was 21 meters. And it's interesting that the 17th of May 1944, this aircraft was built and there was the first flight. And according to the report of the designer, this report was addressed to Hitler personally. It is known that the speed of this of the rise flight of this aircraft was 800 meters per second, and the horizontal speed was 2,200 kilometers per hour. In particular, the drawings and descriptions of such flying discs, by their characteristics, they actually, they were quite advanced for the aircraft technologies of that time. Germany actually, we were interested with this point that Hitler funded these expeditions, and actually the question is why Hitler had such an interest towards this land, towards Tibet. It's none of a secret for anyone that at that time Germany spent more money on these expeditions to Tibet than Americans spent on the nuclear bomb design and making. And if we calculate the sum into modern terms, it's about $20 billion. I should say that probably there was such information and understanding of what kind of information they were searching for. Probably that information was very important. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nastya. We also was looking for the information about Anhenerbe, and we encountered a federal archive in Berlin, Germany, where they store reports of the Anhenerbe expedition. And, there is really such a description of the manuscript. It is absent there, but it's amazing that at least there is access to such documents. It's not all of them are under secret, but as Igor Mikhailovich Danilov has mentioned in the Angels Don't Fall video, many historical records were destroyed. So even regarding Anhenerbe, it's very hard to reconstruct any information, but the fact that they were searching for humans, blonde humans with blue eyes, that was a true fact. In some places in South America, according to the records, there are white people with blue eyes. And I would also like to mention that when we looked into this Bundesdeutschland archive, we've mentioned that it was funded, and Anhenerbe was funded not only by the Third Reich, but also by private persons. And it is very interesting what kind of private persons are those and what aspirations they had. Of course, we have to look into this topic in more detail, but unfortunately there is almost no information about Anhenerbe in open access. Although in Russia, there are historians who fly to Germany and look through the records in about Anhenerbe. Perhaps we will find out more about this topic.
And sometimes findings can be found there somewhere that we cannot expect to find. And such a finding I came across when I was looking for information about Anhenerbe, about their rulers, about their ideology, that Anhenerbe became very quickly part of the SS. And when I faced the description of the society which they were striving to build, it was completely shocking information for me. I will read out what Hitler was saying about it. It's not a question of destroying inequality between people. On the contrary, it must be strengthened by placing insurmountable barriers. What will the future social order be like? My friends, I will tell you this. There will be a class of people of quality and a crowd of different party members who are strictly divided hierarchically. Beneath them, there will be a huge faceless mass, a group of servants who are forever the lowest class. Even lower, there will be the class of defeated foreigners who are slaves nowadays, and there will be a new aristocracy that cannot I talk about. But when I read this information, isn't it the same copy of the consumer society that we are living in now? Isn't it formed this formation that hates people, completely faceless mass of servants which follow the laws and rules imposed by a particular government. There are some countries and continents which are just defeated foreigners for them. Modern slaves, yes, they are really slaves, both on their continents and when they move to another place. And above it, an aristocracy. Consumer society is a dream of a person to go a little bit up. It's a constant struggle. These are characteristics of a consumer society where we are living in now. So when we are reading such information and understand who dreamt about such societies, we start to think about it.
Yes, Alina, therefore there is also creative society, but what is it begin with? It also begins with the knowledge. Basically, creative society is possible only when we as humanity unite. What Hitler and Anhenerbe was striving for, they were striving to divide people, and even the technology which you, Alina, mentioned along with our friends, all these technologies were aimed at dividing, separating people, and basically what kind of technology they had about nuclear bomb technology and other technologies in order to make people divided. But our today's broadcast is dedicated to the point that it is possible to unite. Just look how many countries have joined in this online broadcast. It's the only way for us is to become united, and we are talking about this not in order to frighten people, but in order to show there is a totally different life. And personally, I want this different life. That's why I'm talking about this.
And it is real for nowadays. And it's time to talk about the truth. And creative society, the main foundation is openness of information for all. This information that owns by all the humanity to understand how to live, not to make such mistakes, to take the best and develop it. And the creative society is the only way out of this situation, from this deadlock situation, from hating people society to the society where people live happily, where people support each other, and to return the main understanding. You see, when I was reading this description, this human life is completely devalued. People are separated, and each person plays his own role. But human value is the main that we have. And through this life on this earth, we can realize our main spiritual purpose, to become a spiritual nature, to become an angel. And what should we do in order that we could transfer from the consumer society to the creative? On the first place, unity and support each other, worldwide unity. Yes, I completely agree with you. And this consumerism is completely inapplicable. And you can see how it is shown in archaeology and history. For example, we have an artifact which is interesting, which can show us history of that civilization which lived spiritually, but we cannot decipher it. We just cannot decipher it. But there are artifacts which we bought at a very high price. We deciphered it because we need it, because it corresponds to the forms of consumer society. And this result was felt by many people of Japan when they were bombed by nuclear bomb. And returning to Anhenerbe, this organization dealt not only with searching for technologies of ancient civilizations, but also such a specific way of science. They actually also studied the structure of our brain, of energy construction of a person and connection of some parts of brain and energy construction of a human, and how with the help of each people can influence on the material world. And on your screens you can see the article which was published in 1980 in the military journal in the USA, which describes that such countries as the USA, the USSR, and many others, they have special departments in armies which really study that which is hidden from other people and which is later is being laughed at as a pseudoscience. But actually, if we can apply this knowledge in peaceful aims, we just can imagine how psychology and psychiatrists and many other science could solve all these urgent problems that which were stuck on the material level and are still not answered, because priests know that a human is more than a body. It is also a spiritual part, and besides it, there is something that is invisible, and it is being hidden from us, and it is hidden because to make the role of us simpler. And thanks to the videos with Igor Mikhailovich, where the essence of things are discovered, and we can talk about them.
I really saw every person and could differentiate who was where. It's a technological device. It is based on the fact that I emphasized not consciousness, but...
Not microchipping?
No, it's not microchipping. It has nothing to do with microchips or anything that people are afraid of. Actually, our neural group, meaning our brain, is arranged very interestingly. We understand that it has an electromagnetic nature, that it produces some kind of radiation. We make encephalograms and many other things, but it also produces another special radiation. And people like Pavlo Bekhterev and many others knew about this radiation. They have references to this search and the like, so they knew and understood that it exists. It was clearly told about in ancient sources that we mentioned, meaning, but this radiation is not detected by our modern devices yet. However, if we approach physics from another perspective, it appears that to be very easy. What does it turn out to be? It turns out that every person, meaning the work of our neural group, of our brain, is like a colorful light bulb in the darkness. I mean, it is visible. Or let's put it in words closer to the beginning of the last century. They say it's like a flash of bright, colorful light in ether. This series of colorful flashes, and even a person can be identified by these colors. I mean, why? It turns out that this color emitted by our brain is individual for everyone, like a fingerprint, cornea, DNA, and the like.
Интересно, что это были именно технологии. И знаете, это так открывает глаза.
It is interesting that it was exactly technologies, and actually it sheds lights on the symbols which we are accustomed to. It's like the all-seeing eye, which you can see on the slide we've prepared for you. You can see here on the slide several variants of the all-seeing eye. Could you please all-seeing eye? Could you please show it? With the all-seeing eye. Yeah, right. This right here, you can see that the all-seeing eye exists in various cultures, more ancient cultures like ancient Egypt and Mayan culture, and contemporary cultures also. And our Latin American group prepared a marvelous piece of information about the all-seeing eye, all-seeing eye. Let's listen to Esteban. He will tell us what they found.
Yes, thank you. I would like to tell you about several references. The first one is the legend of Barbarica, ancient Hindu warrior who wanted Krishna to meet with because of his mastery. According to one of the versions, this creature was not like a creature, was not like a human, or fully like a human. And giving his head to Krishna, he was able to see what Barbarica actually saw with his eyes. In another version, it is said that Barbarica has arrows that are able to find any person regardless of any conditions. Krishna closed to Brahmin met Barbarica to test his power, and on the question how many days will he need to finish the war, he said they will need only 1 minute. Then Krishna asked Barbarica, how can he finish the great battle having only arrows? Barbarica answered that 1 arrow is enough to destroy all of his opponents at war. And the first arrow that is used to mark everything you want to eliminate, and the second arrow is used for everything you want to save, and the third arrow is used to destroy everything that's marked by the first one. Then it returns back to you. In other words, only 1 arrow can mark all designated targets, and the other one is used to destroy them. So he's revered as a deity in a in Mexico. There is a culture, Wixárika, which has a much deeper meaning than just mixing of colors. It is the eye of God, or Tsirkuri, as it was called, and it is a symbol of power and defense, and its root conceals a greater, deeper meaning. So according to the legend, one of the gods that created the world used the eye of God to see everything that is going on the earth and underneath it. So these are 2 examples that I would like to share, and that to emphasize that they have a common basis with other of knowledge legends from other parts of the world.
The all-seeing eyes found almost in every culture, and if we look at this slide again, with the all-seeing eye from various cultures, we often see that the eye and the pyramids are together in one symbol. Could you please show us this slide? Right here, can see the eye is somehow related to the pyramid, but the question is how. And if we address literary sources, we'll understand that actually the eye is not just an eyesight organ, but in Sumerians write that Enki's sole eye was able to penetrate the mountains, and he could send his eye to other countries, and also the Enki was called the eye keeper. So it's not just the eyesight, but it is something separate, something special. And on the next slide, I was given the Egyptian symbols here, right here. Here we can see that the eye, the symbol of the eye, is one of the main guardian sign. And actually, there are 2 versions. That there is the right eye was called the eye of Horus, god Horus, who was creative god, And the left eye was the eye of the god Ra, who was kind of a destruction function. And many legends there in Egypt regarding the fact how the eye, by being a separate object, how the eye actually ruined, destroyed people. For example, when God Ra went somewhere and he left his eye to observe people, and then he saw that people no longer obey God. Then he sent his eye to punish people, and this eye ruined so many people that God couldn't stop him. But when we talk about the Horus's eye, there are many legends how gods were fighting with each other for this eye. They were restoring the eye and putting it back into its place. So there is a certain opposition between God and good and evil. And basically, knowing that this was a technology, we can say that it's exactly the case when one and the same technology could be used either for the benefit or against people.
Actually, there is one more interesting fact. If we pay attention to the upper right corner, where you see sort of like, well, maybe thoughts or something like this, they are all colorful, as Igor Mikhailovich mentioned, just in the fragment that we have seen. And that every person actually has some kind of like a personal indicator of this different combination of colors. So probably in this fresk we see this exactly.
Yes, exactly, Alexei. Thank you very much for paying attention to this, because Igor Mikhailovich was talking about the special radiation which our brain emits. And basically this light, multicolorful pieces on the picture shows this radiation. Basically, I go back to this image on another slide. Remember, Oля, when we were discussing this, you remembered and noticed such an interesting thing. Yes, because the pyramid is also shining or glowing, and it can be called the radiating delta. So the pyramid also emits a certain radiation. Yes. And if we go to the next slide, there is an amazing find which was discovered in Ecuador. You can see here a glowing pyramid. So this pyramid with a glowing eye in it, and this eye is radiating in ultraviolet beams. Basically, this pyramid is identical to the pyramid which is depicted on a dollar bill. And on this one, there is also a pyramid with 13 steps and a glowing eye. So it's wonderful, but this does not comply with does not show the information how this technology operated. We were trying to find data, information about how this technology worked, but so far we haven't found much information. But we can share with you one, interesting stone. There is a very interesting scheme that is shown on the stone.
Nastya, hold on there for a second. I would like to remind, since we haven't gone far, when we talked about today and no more than once about mythology, that unfortunately contemporary researchers studying this material, they do not have a very serious attitude towards it. And even this information that you have mentioned speaks about the opposite. The first thing I remembered when you enumerated different eyes of Horus, Ra, and so on, I recalled German deity Odin. So we all know that he was one-eyed, and we all know why he was on one-eyed, because he gave his eye to pay for wisdom. But thanks to videos with Igor Mikhailovich Danilo, we actually begin to understand something. We can compare some things, and for example, recall the following. So as we can recall, Odin ruled the military elite in the Asgard, the gods world, and he was on the throne, and he could see every person in all 9 worlds. It is supposed that there were 2 helpers with him, Hunin and Munin, who flew around and returned and conveyed and told him what people were thinking, what were they doing, and so on. But exactly at this, similar to this, in the video "Angels Do Not Fall," there's information about a certain group of military people, like sleepers. In Alatra, we have understanding of why this name was mentioned like this, like sleeper. And Odin had this horse, which we'll call Sleipnir, who could deliver Odin to any place almost instantaneously. So when comparing the facts in mythology, we come to understanding of the facts that are currently now being supported by archaeology findings, but due to the consumerist format of thinking, scientists actually deny this fact and deny these similarities.
Yeah, it's a wonderful analogy which you made between sleeper, Snape, but I would like to go back to the scheme because I think it is very interesting. Could you please show us? Yes, right here. You can see here some, schematic device or whatever. A person is sitting in a certain kind of helmet, and he keeps a pyramid on its base and the top, and then from this helmet there is a kind of antenna and bowl type antenna, and within it there is another pyramid. Basically, it relates to a certain technology which is connected with a pyramid, and we can see that from this person there are straight lines that go to other people who bow to him. So probably this is basically the depiction of the technology which we talk about, and we can, of course, we can assert it for sure, but it's interesting that in the same cave they found this golden bowl of golden chalice, and probably it was the antenna, but we can see that this bowl is missing a little piece of it. If we go back to the ancient Greek finds on the next slide, we can see, it is amazing. I found such an analogy for myself. Look, if we look at the very top of the pyramid, we see kind of curved lines which are interpreted as waves, and below these curved lines, we can see a depiction of a glass or a bowl. It may be something like an antenna, and then we see two eyes. Then we see two women on the pyramid which are kneeling, and at least I find a very definite proof and analogy between the Ecuador finds and finds from ancient Egypt. Another interesting point that on the other pyramid, when we see the darker pyramid, on the very top again, we see this image of an eye. And then there is a Horus, god Horus, with a very interesting headset. Probably this was kind of a helmet which was used actually. These are all finds, but I think that is very interesting, and it's very interesting to see such analogies. Now can we see the next slide, please? Apparently the pyramids, well, what is interesting that in this very cave they found helmets, and some researchers call it acoustic helmets, which can be put on one's head, and probably this helmet somehow help somebody to focus. The next image, you can see numerous figurines which show how people in various helmets, they wear various helmets and sitting in a lotus position. This position, this pose, is not typical for Colombian cultures at all. This is probably a pose which is more typical for Asian culture, but the analogy is very interesting that when I saw them, they reminded me of the encephalograph. hats. Probably it's my vivid imagination, but on the next slide you can see various figurines with the same helmets, and probably these helmets were used for various functions. Apparently, this technology was kind of universal, and it is amazing that on the second line you can see even kind of reptiloid, skeletons, reptiloid skulls with a pyramid inside. I don't know what kind of technology it is and whether we found what we needed, but for me, the question was always in place, how it operated, how it really functioned. On the next slide, I will show you another find. Can you see this 8-cornered figure with the circles? Somebody says that it's a tablet or some device for meditation, but as a matter of fact, such circles actually are described with a mathematical formula, and the waves in space actually are spread on the Earth thanks to the templates or thanks to the patterns that are established by this formula. Here you have a mathematical modulation, this blue image, but also the higher up there we see the NASA image of the Earth's field. Probably there is some radiation, waves of radiation which spread along the surface of the Earth, and thanks to that this device can operate. On the next slide I show how besides this golden ball, there are also crystals found, magnetic crystals, which are actually magnetic as such, and they are very perceptive to the magnetic field. If it was a part of the device, they could focus on signals. But what is also interesting, I found such an analogy that the magnetic crystals are in composition of the organisms of many in nature, like fishes, birds. So they are not lost. For example, in birds, birds do not get lost when they fly, conduct transatlantic flights. And the same crystals are found in the human, in the neuron cortex, brain cortex. So this to me is the proof that these magnetic crystals might be an antenna. Actually, we have these crystals in our head which can perceive these signals, and the helmet probably helped focus in this signal. And if there was an antenna, probably it was possible to send a signal from the antenna to the human brain. Of course, these are all assumptions, and probably it was a total different device. Probably it was some medical technology. Maybe it was some, I don't know, some communication technology. But another very interesting point, which I would like to share with you, is that in this same cave, there is a certain indication of waves which could ensure this device operate. Could you please show us the next slide? Basically, in various cultures, there are many indications of infrasound. Infrasound is what our ear, basically our ear hears any sounds from the frequency of 20 hertz. Everything below that is infrasound, and if we communicate via infrasound, it's impossible for us to communicate straight, but like whales and elephants, they can communicate with each other through infrasound great distance. And basically scientists say that infrasound can spread at tremendous distance. Probably the key to our finds is here. It is also interesting that infrasound, the range of the infrasound, is typical for babies. The baby brain functions on the infrasound frequencies, and we can see that these figurines with these psychoacoustic helmets, they carry babies in their arms. I can interpret it this kind of a hint, what kind of sound it is. Also, there is an interesting artifact, and scientists characterize it as an eye with a baby. Probably these waves open, I don't know, probably they give an opportunity to work this eye technology, or maybe it means that you are a baby yet, but we still don't have answers what kind of device of this, whether it's this technology or the other one. But I think the next artifacts which I will talk about, could you please show it to us? This artifact indicates that basically it's a map which was found around the same cave, and it is believed that this map dates back to 12,000 years ago. You can see the outlines, the contours of all the continents on Earth. It's very important and interesting that if you look at the map, on the upper map, it's the map of the Western Hemisphere, and you can see two Americas and the island between America and Africa. Do you think it is? What kind of island it is? Probably it is Atlantis. Yes. Yes, scientists say that it is probably Atlantis. Most likely it is Atlantis. So this map shows our Earth before the flood. And also there is additional island between South America and Australia, which this island is also considered to be drowned. And here there is a dot showing where the stone was located. We now see it on the Western Hemisphere map, but on the Eastern Hemisphere map, we see kind of a belt which, embraces the entire Earth, and we can see the eye image. How do you think? What do you think when this image of the eye is located? Mesopotamia, exactly. What does this mean? It's a big question again, whether it's a geolocation of this device, whether it's a place from where this technology came, or maybe there is a very important part of this technology there. We don't know yet. Nevertheless, I think that it's so wonderful that we have such a knowledge right now, and it is amazing. It is really amazing. I would like to hear from you whether you have any other information. The main point is knowledge, and despite the fact that we're talking about the consumerist format, there is such a contradiction. Everything that Nastya has shown us indicates that a person kind of strives for spiritual things, but in the external, the mediators say, no, we will give you some passive perception. And thanks to the fact that a human agrees to such passive perception and rejects the knowledge, we have this consumerism, but we can get education. For example, look at Nastya. She presented all the artifacts, and everyone can become a researcher like this. Thank you very much, Nastya. I had such a pleasure listening to you, and I'm very, very satisfied. Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. You know, I also got very interested in all that, and I think that if this device, this technology is available right now, and we could use it for peaceful purposes, we trace these waves and prevent murders, for example, some crimes, some fraud. So this technology could serve humanity. But of course, this technology can be used only in a creative society. Yes, I should mention that in the video, Igor Mikhailovich mentioned Bekhterev, Vladimir Bekhterev. Of course, it is very interesting to watch videos about him, because in the beginning of the 20th century, Bekhterev studied the brain activity and radiations and frequencies, etc. Probably ancient people didn't show us their knowledge directly, but they had this knowledge, and basically Bekhterev got to this knowledge because he calculated the distance between people who transmit information and receive information. Why? Because there is a power influence of a human thought, and Vladimir Bekhterev has proved that it is possible to influence influence humans through images, and this eye is also a device to influence. I think we have plenty of study and we have many interesting things ahead. Everybody's become thoughtful. Basically, this technology is, with respect to this technology, we can show you a video.
It's impossible to shield this light coming from and radiated by the neural group in no way and nowhere. No matter where a person is and under what conditions, he will still be visible, meaning he is still perceived. So this way, L controlled the whole world in his time, because he saw everyone's location. And it's clear that there were communications as well, and there was everything, so he could control in battles, specifically giving commands to one on another person. That's only exalted L. How come? How can a human, the all-seeing God, he sees everything? Hence, there was his omnipresent gaze, or this omnipresent eye was drawn there, which sees everything and knows everything. It is interesting that after the destruction of Atlantis, this device, or let's put it so, these abilities were used when the ideal society was built, meaning when the first Hyperborea was established. There are many legends and fairy tales about it as well. They are twisted, but it doesn't matter. When the ideal society was created and purified, all the followers of the Atlanteans, those fallen angels, so-called, were forbidden to live on the surface of Earth. All of them lived underground. This is really so, and this is confirmed historically. There are plenty of cities and tunnels that connect the whole world underground, and they didn't have the right to come out to the surface, but they were allowed to live underground. They were taken pity on. Yet, their every step was controlled. I mean, everyone was visible wherever they were. This indicates that this kind of radiation, I'm saying once again, it's impossible to block it anyway. Wherever a person is, the light radiated by our brain is visible at the ocean bottom and in any cave. This is really so.
So technology was used against themselves.
Well, yes, technology is technology.
Yes, it's really so. And I think that today, those who were present at this conference or will watch it later, they probably understand why this information is hidden. This information about the beginning of the consumer society, the information about those cultures and those traditions which existed before. And almost all information, these grains were eliminated, which talk about the primordial essence of a person, because such knowledge makes a person free. And it is impossible to control free people. But we should understand that freedom is firstly responsibility of each person and the collective responsibility of all the society. Because when people are aware of that, and when they will take responsibility for their fate and the fate of the whole society, then our future will undoubtedly be different. And that lie which we discussed today, it will be completely different, and it will not exist anymore.
Yes, indeed. And people already started asking questions. And I think that very many people will join us in asking questions. When not getting answers, they will try to look for truth. And now, as we have convinced today, when we are trying to search for the truth, it's impossible to suggest anything to people by priests or politicians, because a person becomes really free. Today, while listening to everything, I understand that, me, myself, and all the viewers who will watch us, they actually dream to escape from this hell of consumerist society. And we want to really step into this world of happiness and wellness and joy, and we should do it together.
All right, let me say it. Guys, thank you very much for today's participation. This is a great start of the project where you have seen on the screen like how many of us, I don't know, 20 people maybe, but there are a lot more people who were outside the video who helped us to broadcast it live so that many people could interact, and also they interacted with our viewers. And this is a unique experience of ALLATRA TV, of such programs when we in live format we hear our viewers, we are able to answer them. Thank you very much thanks for translator, for interpreters. 10 languages. This is how many languages this live broadcast was interpreted into 10 languages. So Kaleidoscope of Facts is, let's say, an opportunity for any person on this planet who is concerned, who is interested to find the truth, and just go ahead and do it. I'll remind, on the 13th of this September, there is an opportunity to continue this broadcasting on any place on Earth. It could sound maybe fantastic for some, but believe me, we managed to come together, and any person who will be thrilled to find out something, he will be helped, he will be able to join. And speaking for myself, when I hear for some information for the first time, like in the videos with Irgin Mihalich, and you try to find it, you have some difficulties finding it, and you just basically find some little puzzles, but then you conveyed it to a person, you know, who also watched this video, and he also found something. So this chain actually starts to become more lengthy, and more people come in, and more people find more information, more facts, and all together we are able to make this as a really interesting and beautiful puzzle or kaleidoscope of facts. So guys, thank you very much. Go ahead and join us and pick the video and that information which actually excites you. Only together, as it was mentioned today in More Than Once, only together we will be able to build a society where everyone will be happy. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Igor Mikhailovich, what kind of conditions should be created in society which would favor the emergence of angels in this world?
Everything is actually simple. In order for a mass of angels to emerge in this world, an ideal society, an Eden, is needed. All of us just need to build an Eden, that which was here for thousands of years. It is possible to restore everything, because everything was here. We can just recall what all of us have forgotten. We were forced to forget it, but we haven't forgotten it. We remember it. Deep inside, everyone knows and understands it. I just think that people should stop serving Satan and should recall who they are, recall their nature, what we are here for, and really build an Eden. These are the conditions under which people will really become angels. These are the conditions under which the spiritual world will love and protect our entire world. These are conditions which preservation of humanity will be guaranteed. And this world will exist for as long as angels emerge. This is what is said in the Holy Scriptures, right? In allegorical form and alter form, but this is true. And in order for us to build this Eden, this ideal society, we should first build a creative society, abandon the consumerist format, stop being beasts to one another, stop being enemies to one another, and become humans and start loving each other. This is very simple. There's nothing difficult about it, right? So, my friends, let's begin with something simple. Let's start loving each other.